Wind howls across the empty valley, a mournful sound that carries secrets from another time. A lone wolf calls in the distance, its cry echoing through the night. Lieutenant Caleb Morgan has never believed in the supernatural. 20 years in Special Forces taught him that every mystery has a logical explanation. But last night, for the seventh consecutive night at precisely 2:14 a.m., Sarge, his retired military canine, crawled from his bed, stood motionless before the window overlooking the old storage shed. No barking, no growling. Just standing there rigid as stone, his yellow eyes fixed on the darkness as if tracking something only he could see. When Caleb placed his hand on the dog's back, he felt every muscle tense beneath the gray fur, ready to attack. Caleb knows this sign. In the battlefields of Afghanistan, it had saved his team's lives countless times. Tonight, Caleb decides to investigate what's frightening his furry companion. He reaches for his old Colt 1911, a gift from his late father, a Cold War veteran, and steps onto the porch. The October wind carries the chill of approaching winter, and in the pale moonlight, he notices something wrong with the ground near the storage shed. The earth has been disturbed, but not by animals or nature. Someone has been digging on his land, and they're searching for something. A static-filled radio crackles from inside the house. All units, this is Command Center. We've received reports of suspicious activity near Sector 401B, secured area of Project Comstock. Files may have been compromised. Tighten security. Repeat, tighten security. The first light of dawn stretches across the Nevada sky, painting the mountains gold against the fading night. Lieutenant Caleb Morgan stands on his weathered porch watching the sun climb over the eastern ridge. His property stretches before him, 30 acres of hard-won solitude at the end of a dirt road that most maps don't even show. The ranch house itself is modest, a single-story structure built in the 1960s, its wooden exterior worn silver by countless seasons. Behind it, the storage shed sits dark and silent, its shadow stretching long across the ground that had been disturbed sometime in the night. Caleb's face is a roadmap of experience, deep lines etched by desert sun and combat stress. At 52, his hair has gone salt and pepper, but his frame remains military solid, the result of a discipline that never left him even after retirement. His eyes, pale blue and watchful, scan the property with the practiced gaze of a man who has survived by noticing what others miss. Beside him, Sarge sits at attention, a German shepherd with gray flecking his muzzle. The dog's ears pivot, constantly radar dishes seeking signals in the morning quiet. His service vest, worn only during times of alert, bears the faded insignia of the 5th Special Forces K-9 unit. Like his master, Sarge carries the dignity of a warrior in retirement. Caleb takes a sip of black coffee from a chipped mug that reads, U.S. Army, mess with the best D, like the rest. What did you see last night, that old friend? Caleb's voice is a low rumble, rough from years of shouting orders over gunfire and helicopter rotors. 7 nights in a row now, always at 2:14. Sarge's ears flick back at his master's voice, but his eyes remain fixed on the storage shed. The dog's posture hasn't relaxed since they stepped outside. Caleb sets down his coffee and descends the 3 wooden steps to the ground. His boots crunch on the gravel path that leads to the storage shed. The structure isn't large, maybe 20 by 15 feet, built of the same weathered wood as the house, with a rusted tin roof that gleams dully in the morning light. It had been here when Caleb bought the place after Rebecca died 3 years ago. Cancer took her quick, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. Sometimes that felt like mercy. Other times it felt like theft. As he approaches the shed, Caleb notes the disturbed earth along the eastern wall. Someone had been digging, and recently. The soil is darker there, looser than the hard-packed dirt surrounding it. Kneeling, he examines the ground more closely. The indentations aren't random. They're methodical, the work of someone searching for something specific. What were they looking for, he murmurs, running his fingers through the loosened soil. His fingers touch something cold and metallic. Brushing away more dirt, he uncovers a spent shell casing, not from any weapon he owns. He examines it carefully, turning it in the growing light. 5.7 by 28mm, a round used in FN-57 pistols. Expensive, military grade, not something your average trespasser would carry. Sarge appears at his side nose, working the disturbed ground in tight professional patterns. The dog freezes suddenly, a low whine building in his throat. Caleb follows his gaze to something half buried in the soil, a small metallic object reflecting the morning sun. Carefully, Caleb excavates the item. It's a military challenge coin, tarnished and dirt-encrusted. He rubs his thumb across its surface, revealing an emblem he doesn't recognize, a silver shield with a black diagonal band. Around the edge, barely legible numbers 715 SIU. Strategic Intelligence Unit, Caleb whispers, recognition dawning. His father had mentioned this unit once. A Cold War relic, a ghost division that officially never existed. The sound of an approaching vehicle pulls Caleb's attention from the coin. A dust cloud rises from the access road, someone navigating the quarter-mile drive from the main highway. Few people come this way, and fewer still without calling first. Inside Sarge, Caleb commands pocketing the coin and shell casing. The dog obeys instantly, moving to the house with military precision. Caleb follows, entering the sparse living room, just as his cell phone rings. The screen displays a name he hasn't seen in years. Victor Reynolds. Victor, his former XO from Afghanistan. Last Caleb heard, Victor had taken a position with some intelligence agency after retirement. He'd never specified which one. Morgan, Caleb answers, keeping his voice neutral. Lieutenant, Victor's voice is exactly as Caleb remembers it. Precise, measured, carrying the slight Midwestern accent that 12 years in Special Forces never quite erased. Been a while. 5 years, 3 months, Caleb replies. Since Rebecca's funeral. I heard you bought old man Henderson's place out in the middle of nowhere. It suits me. I'm sure it does. Victor pauses. Listen, I'm calling because something's come up. Something connected to your father. Well, Caleb's grip tightens on the phone. His father, Colonel William Morgan, had passed 7 years ago. Heart attack while splitting firewood at his cabin in Colorado. A soldier's death, quick, dignified, without fuss. What about my father? Not over the phone, Victor says. But you should know people have been asking questions about his service record, specifically his time with Project Comstock. The vehicle outside is closer now. Engine sound clearly audible. Through the window, Caleb sees a black SUV approaching, government issue by the look of it. What's Project Comstock? Caleb asks, though the name sounds vaguely familiar. Something his father had mentioned once after too many bourbons on a Christmas Eve years ago. Your father never told you. Victor sounds genuinely surprised. Check your mail. I sent something that might help explain. And Caleb, be careful who you trust right now. The line goes dead as the SUV comes to a stop in front of the house. Sarge growls low in his throat, positioning himself between Caleb and the door. Easy, boy, Caleb murmurs, moving to a cabinet beside the fireplace. From inside, he retrieves a Beretta M9, his service weapon kept loaded out of habit. He tucks it into the waistband at the small of his back, concealed by his flannel shirt. Through the window, he watches as a man exits the SUV, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit that seems out of place in the dusty Nevada landscape. He moves with the controlled precision of military training, scanning the property as he approaches the house. A knock sounds 3 sharp raps. Professional, authoritative. Caleb opens the door, keeping his right hand free. Sarge remains at heel alert, but quiet. Lieutenant Morgan. The man stands on the porch, hands visible at his sides. A deliberate posture that Caleb recognizes as a soldier's courtesy when approaching another operator. Mason Blackwood, Aegis Security Consultants. Blackwood is younger than Caleb, maybe early 40s, with close-cropped dark hair and the unmistakable bearing of someone who has seen combat. His eyes are brown, observant, missing nothing. A thin scar traces from his left temple to his jaw, the kind left by shrapnel, not a blade. What can I do for you, Mr. Blackwood? Caleb doesn't invite him in. I represent a development group interested in acquiring properties in this region, Blackwood says smoothly. Your land has certain geographical advantages that make it particularly valuable to my clients. Not for sale, Caleb replies flatly. Blackwood smiles, a practiced expression that doesn't reach his eyes. I understand your attachment to the property, Lieutenant, but I'm authorized to offer substantially above market value. Perhaps we could discuss terms. Nothing to discuss. Caleb starts to close the door, but Blackwood's next words freeze him in place. Project Comstock, Blackwood says quietly. Does that name mean anything to you, Lieutenant? Caleb stares at the man measuring him. Should it? Your father was Colonel William Morgan, the 715th Strategic Intelligence Unit. His name appears on certain documents related to Project Comstock. Blackwood's eyes flick past Caleb, taking in the sparse interior of the house. Documents that have recently become of great interest to various parties. Sarge growls a deep rumbling that Caleb recognizes as his alert for potential threats. The dog's focus is entirely on Blackwood, hackles raised. Your dog has good instincts, Blackwood observes calmly. Military trained. Afghanistan, 3 tours. Like his master. Blackwood nods respectfully. Lieutenant, I'm not here to threaten or intimidate, but you should know that your father's legacy has become a matter of some concern. People are looking for something they believe is connected to this property. On what people? Caleb asks, hand drifting closer to his concealed weapon. The kind who dig up other people's land in the middle of the night. Blackwood replies, eyes moving meaningfully toward the storage shed. The kind who don't ask permission before they start excavating. So Blackwood knows about the disturbed soil. Has he been watching the property? I've overstayed my welcome, Blackwood says, sensing Caleb's growing suspicion. He reaches into his jacket, slowly telegraphing the movement, and produces a business card. When you're ready to discuss this further, call me. Day or night. Caleb takes the card without looking at it. I'll show you out. No need, Lieutenant. I know the way. Blackwood turns, then pauses. One more thing. That storage shed, I'd be careful around it. What's buried there might be better left undisturbed. With that, he walks back to his SUV, the gravel crunching under his polished shoes. Caleb watches as the vehicle reverses, turns and disappears down the access road, dust billowing in its wake. Once the SUV is out of sight, Caleb examines the business card. Mason Blackwood, Senior Consultant, Aegis Security Consultants, protecting what matters. Below this, a phone number with a Washington, D.C. area code. Sarge whines, drawing Caleb's attention. The dog is staring at the mailbox at the end of the driveway, a battered metal container on a wooden post. Right, Caleb mutters, remembering Victor's words. Check the mail. The walk to the mailbox gives Caleb time to process the strange encounter. Blackwood wasn't just a real estate developer. That much was obvious. The mention of Project Comstock, the same name from Victor's call, and the radio transmission he'd heard earlier couldn't be coincidence. Inside the mailbox is a single manila envelope. No stamps, no postmark. Someone had delivered it by hand. The envelope bears no writing except for a simple M penned in the corner. Back inside, Caleb sits at his kitchen table and carefully opens the envelope. Inside is a yellowed newspaper clipping dated August 17, 1962, with a headline that reads, Comstock Mining Corporation breaks ground on new facility. Beneath it, a black and white photograph shows men in suits breaking ground with silver shovels. Caleb recognizes none of them, but a handwritten note in the margin catches his attention. William, perimeter security confirmed. Proceed with phase 2. J.H. Also in the envelope is a folded note in Victor's handwritten scrawl. Your father's past is catching up to all of us. Storage shed, southeast corner, 3 feet down. Use the key. Taped to the note is a small, unusual key, not for any conventional lock, but something more specialized. Military, perhaps. Caleb stares at these items spread before him, pieces of a puzzle he didn't know existed until today. His father had never spoken much about his military service beyond generalities. Cold War deployments, training missions, the occasional reference to sensitive operations. Like many men of his generation, Colonel William Morgan believed some stories weren't meant to be shared even with family. But now it seems those stories had found their way to Caleb's doorstep. Sarge paces restlessly by the door, his nails clicking on the hardwood floor. The dog wants to investigate the shed again. That much is clear from his body language. All right, boy, Caleb says, gathering the items and securing them in a locked drawer. Let's see what all the fuss is about. Outside, the morning has warmed considerably, the Nevada sun beating down from a cloudless sky. Caleb retrieves a shovel from beside the house and walks deliberately toward the storage shed, Sarge trotting beside him. The shed's interior is dim and dusty, filled with the expected accumulation of rural life. Tools hanging from pegs, bags of fertilizer stacked in corners, an old riding mower pushed against one wall. Nothing unusual or out of place. Nothing that would explain Sarge's fixation or the nocturnal visitors. Caleb moves to the southeast corner as Victor's note indicated. The floorboards here are like the rest, weathered wood gaps between the planks filled with decades of dust. But as he kneels to examine them more closely, he notices something: the nails securing these particular boards are newer than the others, less rusted, their heads unscratched. Using a crowbar from the wall, Caleb carefully pries up the boards, revealing bare earth beneath. Sarge watches intently, his whole body tense with anticipation. The soil is easier to dig here than outside, looser, less compacted. At just over 2 feet down, Caleb's shovel strikes something solid. He clears away more dirt, revealing a metal container, roughly the size of an ammunition box. It's military-grade steel olive drab with a specialized lock that matches the key Victor provided. Caleb lifts the box from its hiding place and sets it on a workbench. Dust motes dance in the sunbeam that cuts through the shed's single window as he inserts the key. The lock mechanism turns with surprising smoothness, as if recently maintained. Inside the box, nestled in foam padding, lies a collection of items: a leather-bound journal with WM embossed on the cover, a manila folder stamped "Classified, Project Silver Shield," several microfilm canisters, and a silver pendant on a chain, an intricate piece of jewelry that seems oddly feminine among these military artifacts. Caleb lifts the pendant first. It's heavier than it looks, the silver warm against his palm. The front bears an engraved design, a complex pattern that resembles a map with tiny markings that might be coordinates. When he presses a hidden catch, the pendant opens like a locket, revealing a small compartment inside of it. Empty. Next, he examines the journal. The first entry is dated June 12, 1961. Assigned to Project Comstock today. Officially, we're providing security for a mining operation. Unofficially, well, there's no mining happening here. Whatever they're building underground requires top clearance. Only Hartman and his science team go below level 2. Our job is to keep everyone else out, including our Soviet friends who have suddenly developed a keen interest in Nevada geology. Caleb flips through more pages, scanning entries that describe security rotations, personnel assessments, and cryptic references to the package and containment protocols. His father's handwriting becomes increasingly urgent in later entries. October 3, 1962. Surveillance detected 2 miles north of the perimeter. Team dispatched. 2 men apprehended. Russian operatives with diplomatic cover. They're getting bolder. Something big is happening soon. Hartman has doubled security on level 4. October 17, 1962. Cuban situation escalating. Hartman says Silver Shield may be activated. God help us all if it comes to that. October 26, 1962. Crisis averted, but Silver Shield remains in place. New protocols established for ultimate contingency. The pendant is the key. Eleanor has the coordinates encoded. If Washington falls, we initiate safeguard. The final entry, dated November 4, 1962, consists of just one line. The truth stays buried until it's needed. Some weapons should never see the light of day. Caleb sets down the journal, his mind racing. Silver Shield, safeguard, the Cuban Missile Crisis. His father had been involved in something far more significant than he'd ever let on. Something connected to the darkest days of the Cold War, when nuclear annihilation seemed imminent. He turns his attention to the classified folder. Inside are technical schematics for what appears to be a weapons system of some kind. Compact, portable, with a yield measurement that makes his blood run cold. A handwritten note, paperclip to the document, reads, "Miniaturized tactical device operational. 6 units secured at Facility C. Authorization protocols attached. Tactical nuclear weapons. The United States had developed them during the Cold War. Small enough to fit in a backpack, powerful enough to level a small city. Most had been decommissioned decades ago, their existence barely acknowledged in official records." The sound of a vehicle approaching pulls Caleb from his thoughts. He quickly returns the items to the box, leaving only the pendant, which he slips into his pocket. The box goes back into its hiding place, floorboards replaced just as the vehicle comes to a stop outside. Through the shed window, Caleb sees a familiar government-issue sedan. The driver's door opens and Victor Reynolds steps out. Older than Caleb remembers his once black hair, now steel gray, but still carrying himself with military bearing. He's wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, under a lightweight jacket, casual clothes that nonetheless fail to disguise the outline of a shoulder holster. Caleb steps out of the shed, Sarge at his heel. Victor. Caleb. Victor's smile seems genuine, though it doesn't quite reach his eyes. Been a long time. The two men shake hands, a firm professional greeting between soldiers who once trusted each other with their lives. You look good, Victor says, surveying Caleb. Retirement suits you better than it does me. This isn't a social call, Caleb replies, getting straight to the point. What's Project Comstock, and why are people suddenly interested in my father's connection to it? Victor's expression turns serious. Not out here, walls don't have ears, but open spaces might. Inside the house, Victor declines Caleb's offer of coffee, instead pacing the living room with the restless energy of a man accustomed to action. Sarge watches him warily, never taking his eyes off the visitor. Your dog doesn't remember me, Victor observes. Sarge remembers everything, Caleb counters. That's what's bothering me. Victor nods, accepting the implicit warning. Fair enough, I'll get to the point. 3 weeks ago, classified files relating to a Cold War project codenamed Silver Shield were stolen from a secure facility in Virginia. These files detailed a contingency plan developed during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a last resort option if conventional nuclear deterrence failed. Tactical nuclear weapons, Caleb says, watching Victor's reaction carefully. Victor's surprise is momentary but visible. You found the box. You knew it was there. I suspected. Your father and I, we had conversations before he died. He never gave me specific details, but he hinted that if anything happened to him, you would eventually need to know about his work with Project Comstock. Which was what exactly, Caleb demands. Victor sits in an armchair, suddenly looking tired. Officially, Comstock Mining Corporation was a silver mining operation established in 1961, about 12 miles northeast of here. In reality, it was a cover for a top-secret facility where the military developed and stored a series of tactical nuclear devices. 6 Silver Shield units, each with a 2-kiloton yield, designed to be transported and deployed by 2-man special operations teams. Backpack nukes, Caleb says flatly. That's the colloquial term, yes. They were intended as a last resort if Soviet forces ever gained a foothold on American soil. The idea was to have pre-positioned weapons that could be activated even if the chain of command was compromised. And my father was involved with this. Your father was head of security for the entire project, Victor explains. He was responsible for ensuring those weapons never fell into the wrong hands. When the Cuban Missile Crisis ended, the Silver Shield program was officially terminated. The weapons were supposed to be decommissioned and removed. Supposed to be, Caleb repeats, catching the qualification. Victor meets his gaze steadily. There are indications that at least one device wasn't decommissioned. Instead, it was hidden, secured in a location known only to a select few individuals, including your father. Why would they do that? Insurance, Victor says simply. The early 60s were paranoid times, Caleb. Some officials believed there might be Soviet sympathizers within our own government. Keeping one device off the books, known only to a handful of absolutely trusted personnel, was seen as a necessary precaution. Caleb processes this information, the implications settling like a weight on his shoulders. And now someone's looking for it. Not just someone, Victor says grimly. We've identified at least 2 groups actively searching for information about Silver Shield. One appears to be a private military contractor with ties to former Soviet bloc countries. The other, he hesitates. The other, Caleb prompts, appears to be operating from within our own intelligence community, which is why I can't go through official channels with this. I don't know who to trust. So you came to me, Caleb concludes, because of my father. Because you're the son of William Morgan, and this property sits on what used to be the outer security perimeter of Project Comstock. Victor corrects him. Your father purchased this land after retirement for a reason, Caleb. I believe he was still guarding something. The missing nuke, Caleb says, the reality of the situation hitting him fully. That's my theory, yes. Victor leans forward. Did you find anything else in that box? Something that might indicate a location? Caleb considers the pendant in his pocket. Something holds him back from mentioning it, a soldier's instinct for caution that has saved his life more than once. Just the journal and some technical documents. He lies smoothly. Nothing about locations. Victor's disappointment is visible but controlled. We need to find that weapon before anyone else does, Caleb. If it fell into the wrong hands... I understand the stakes, Caleb interrupts, but I'm still trying to process the fact that my father was involved in hiding a nuclear weapon somewhere in Nevada. Not just involved, Victor says quietly. According to what we've pieced together, he was the architect of the entire contingency plan. The weapon wouldn't just be hidden, it would be secured behind a series of safeguards that only someone with specific knowledge could navigate. The information settles between them, heavy with implication. Caleb's father, the stern, principled man who taught him about duty and honor, had concealed a nuclear weapon as insurance during one of the most volatile periods in American history. And now, decades later, that weapon had become the focus of a dangerous treasure hunt. What about the man who visited earlier, Caleb asks. Mason Blackwood, Aegis Security. Victor stiffens. Blackwood was here when, this morning, claimed he represented developers interested in buying the property. Stay away from him, Victor warns. Aegis isn't just a security firm. They're mercenaries with high-level connections. If Blackwood is involved, this is bigger than I thought. A sharp bark from outside interrupts them. Sarge, who had slipped out through the dog door, is sounding an alert from the front yard. Caleb moves to the window, Victor following. Outside, a cloud of dust rises from the access road. Multiple vehicles approaching at high speed. You expecting company? Victor asks, his hand moving toward his concealed weapon. No, Caleb retrieves his Beretta from its hiding place. And neither were you, I'm guessing. We need to leave, Victor says urgently. Now, is there a back way out? Maintenance road behind the property. Connects to Route 50 about 3 miles east. Victor nods. My car is too visible. We'll take yours. The approaching vehicles are closer now. Caleb can make out 3 SUVs, black and unmarked, moving in tactical formation up the access road. Who are they? Caleb asks, already moving toward the kitchen where his truck keys hang. Could be Blackwood's people, Victor says, following closely. Could be worse. Worse how? The files weren't just stolen, Caleb. The facility's security team was killed. Professional hit, military precision. Whoever wants that weapon isn't planning a museum exhibition. Caleb whistles sharply and Sarge appears at the back door, alert and ready. The 3 of them move quickly through the kitchen and out the rear entrance. Caleb's truck, a weathered Ford F-150, sits behind the house, partially concealed by a stand of juniper trees. As they approach the vehicle, the first SUV reaches the front of the house. Men in tactical gear pour out, weapons drawn. Private military contractors by the look of their equipment. No uniforms, no identifying insignia, just the unmistakable efficiency of hired operators. Move, Victor hisses, climbing into the passenger seat as Caleb takes the wheel. Sarge jumps into the back seat, low growls emanating from his throat. The truck's engine roars to life just as the first armed men round the corner of the house. Caleb floors the accelerator, the truck fishtailing on the dirt as it lurches toward the narrow maintenance road that cuts through the scrubland behind his property. In the rearview mirror, he sees the men raising their weapons. Victor rolls down his window, leans out with his pistol, a Sig Sauer P226, and fires 3 rapid shots. Not aimed to kill, but to force the pursuers to take cover, buying precious seconds. Friends of yours? Caleb asked grimly, navigating the rough track at dangerous speed. If they were my people, they wouldn't be shooting at us. Victor returns, ducking back inside as return fire pings off the truck's tailgate. The maintenance road is little more than 2 dirt tracks, separated by a ridge of hardy desert grass rarely used except by utility crews servicing the power lines that stretch across the Nevada wilderness. The truck bounces violently as Caleb pushes it to its limits, dust billowing behind them in a choking cloud. They're following the Victor reports, looking back. 2 of the SUVs have abandoned the house and are now in pursuit, their superior suspension handling the rough terrain better than Caleb's aging truck. There's a ravine about a mile ahead, Caleb says, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Too narrow for their vehicles. If we can reach it, we can proceed on foot to a ranger station, I know. Victor nods, checking his weapons magazine. They're gaining. A bullet shatters the back window, sending glass fragments spraying through the cab. Sarge yelps but remains steady, military training overriding his natural instincts. Sorry about your window, Victor says, lining up another shot through the new opening. I'm more concerned about the guys with automatic weapons. Caleb retorts, yanking the wheel hard to avoid a boulder in their path. The ravine appears ahead, a narrow cut through the rocky landscape barely wider than a man's shoulders in places. Caleb aims the truck directly for it, then slams on the brakes at the last possible moment. The vehicle skids sideways, coming to rest perpendicular to the ravine entrance. Out, he commands, grabbing a go-bag from behind the seat. Standard survival gear he keeps prepared out of habit. Victor exits on his side, providing covering fire as Caleb and Sarge dash for the ravine. The pursuing SUVs are closing fast, their engines howling as they navigate the difficult terrain. Men lean from the windows, rifles braced, as they fire in controlled bursts. The ravine provides immediate cover, a natural fortress with high walls of red sandstone worn smooth by centuries of flash floods. Caleb, Victor, and Sarge move deeper into its shadowed confines, the sounds of pursuit fading temporarily as their attackers realize they'll have to continue on foot. We have maybe 2 minutes before they reach the entrance, Victor estimates, reloading his weapon. The ranger station, how far? 3 miles through the ravine, then another 2 across open country. Caleb replies, checking Sarge for injuries. The dog appears unharmed, though a thin line of blood from a glass cut traces his flank. We won't make it, Victor says bluntly. Not with that many operators in pursuit. Then we need a diversion. Caleb reaches into his go-bag and removes a small metal container. Inside are half a dozen homemade smoke bombs, a remnant from his military days when he taught survival tactics to new recruits. Chemical smoke, Victor asks appreciatively. With a little something extra, Caleb confirms. These will burn hot enough to trigger the brush at the ravine entrance. Won't stop them, but it'll slow them down and make them think twice about following too closely. The shouts of their pursuers echo through the ravine. They've reached the abandoned truck and are organizing their approach. Caleb can make out at least 3 distinct voices issuing commands. Professional operators, Victor notes, military trained, probably ex-special forces from the sound of them. Takes one to know one, Caleb replies grimly. He activates 2 of the smoke devices and tosses them toward the ravine entrance. Within seconds, thick white smoke billows upward, carrying the acrid scent of chemical compounds. The dry brush ignites, creating a wall of fire and smoke that will force their pursuers to find another way around, buying them precious minutes. Move, Caleb orders, and the 3 of them press deeper into the ravine, navigating its twisting path by memory and instinct. The sandstone walls rise 30 feet on either side, creating a natural corridor that winds through the Nevada backcountry like a giant snake. After 10 minutes of hard travel, they reach a wider section where the ravine opens briefly into a small box canyon. Here, the walls are less sheer with natural footholds that might allow them to climb to higher ground. Up there, Caleb indicates a narrow ledge about 15 feet up the canyon wall. That shelf continues for about half a mile, eventually connecting with an old mining trail. We can use it to circle back and approach the ranger station from the east. Victor studies the climb skeptically. What about your type, Sam? In answer, Caleb kneels beside Sarge and secures a repelling harness from his go-bag around the dog's body. He's done this before. The sound of gunfire echoes through the ravine, distant but growing closer. Their pursuers have found a way around the fire barrier. They're persistent, Victor notes, holstering his weapon to free his hands for climbing. They're after something worth killing for, Caleb reminds him. A functional tactical nuke would fetch tens of millions on the black market. The climb is challenging but manageable for men with their training. Caleb goes first, finding handholds in the rough sandstone, testing each one before trusting his weight to it. Once on the ledge, he secures his position and lowers a rope for Sarge. The dog waits patiently as Victor attaches the line to his harness. Then Caleb hoists him up with practiced efficiency, a technique they'd perfected in Afghanistan when navigating difficult terrain with a military canine. Victor follows last, his movements revealing the smooth competence of a man who has kept himself in combat readiness despite his age. As he reaches the ledge, a bullet strikes the rock inches from his hand, sending stone fragments flying. They've spotted us, Victor says, unnecessarily pulling himself onto the ledge as more shots pepper the canyon wall. The ledge provides minimal cover, just enough rock overhang to shield them from direct fire from below. Caleb, Victor, and Sarge press their backs against the canyon wall, inching sideways along the narrow shelf of stone that will lead them away from their pursuers. We need to know who we're dealing with, Caleb says, reaching into his bag for a small pair of compact binoculars. Carefully, he edges his head out just enough to observe the canyon floor below. Three men have entered the box canyon, moving with the disciplined precision of Special Operations Forces. Their tactical gear is high-end but unmarked, the anonymous equipment of mercenaries or black ops teams. The leader gestures silently, deploying his men in a standard search pattern. Professionals, Caleb confirms, pulling back from the edge. But I don't recognize their tactics as any specific unit. Private military, Victor suggests. Blackwood's people, most likely. They continue along the ledge, moving as quickly as safety allows on the narrow path. The stone shelf varies in width, sometimes barely a foot across, forcing them to sidle along with their backs pressed against the canyon wall. Other sections widen enough to allow more comfortable movement. After 20 minutes of careful progress, the sounds of pursuit have faded. The ledge begins to slope upward, eventually joining a wider trail that shows the unmistakable signs of an old mining operation. Rusted equipment, collapsed timber supports, and the weathered remnants of rail tracks that once transported ore from the hills. We should be about 2 miles from the ranger station, Caleb says, consulting the mental map he's constructed of the area during his years living on the property. The trail ahead connects to a fire road that the rangers maintain. Victor nods, but his expression has turned troubled. Caleb, there's something you should know about your father. This isn't the time for family history, Caleb replies, checking Sarge's harness for damage before removing it. It might be exactly the time, Victor insists, because I'm not convinced the weapon is what they're really after. This gets Caleb's attention. Explain. Victor sighs suddenly, looking every one of his 60-plus years. Project Comstock wasn't just about developing tactical nukes. It was about creating a fail-safe system, a way to ensure that even if Soviet agents infiltrated the highest levels of our government, they couldn't access our most devastating weapons. The Silver Shield program, Caleb says, recalling the classified folder's contents. Yes, but there was more to it than just the weapons themselves. There was also a list, a comprehensive documentation of suspected Soviet assets within the U.S. government military and intelligence communities. Your father compiled that list. The implication lands heavily between them. You're saying my father was hunting Soviet spies within our own agencies. Not just hunting them, identifying them, documenting their activities, building cases that could be acted upon if necessary. By 1962, he had assembled evidence implicating over 30 high-level officials and military officers as potential Soviet assets. And this list was stored with the Silver Shield files. No, Victor says gravely. The list was too sensitive to be stored anywhere official. Your father kept it separate, hidden somewhere only he knew. The leading theory is that he concealed it with the missing tactical nuke. Caleb absorbs this information, pieces falling into place. So these people might be after the list, not just the weapon. The weapon is valuable, Victor acknowledges, but that list, even decades later, it could destroy careers, tarnish legacies, rewrite portions of Cold War history. The families of those named would face public shame. Political dynasties could collapse overnight. The sound of a helicopter breaks the momentary silence, distant but approaching. Victor tenses hand, moving to his weapon. That's not park rangers, he says unnecessarily. We need to move. There's a fire lookout tower about a mile north, Caleb says, making a quick decision. Abandoned years ago, but the structure should still be sound. We can use it to get our bearings and figure out our next move. They set off at a brisk pace, Sarge trotting ahead, his military training making him an ideal point man despite his age. The trail winds through increasingly rugged terrain, climbing steadily toward the ridgeline, where the lookout tower stands silhouetted against the clear blue sky. The helicopter sound grows louder, then fades as it moves west, searching in a grid pattern, but not yet directly over their position. Professional, methodical, like everything else about this pursuit. Your father always said you were the best soldier he'd ever known, Victor says suddenly as they climb. Said you had instincts he couldn't teach the men under his command. He never told me that, Caleb replies, surprised by this revelation. William Morgan wasn't much for sharing his feelings, Victor acknowledges, but he was proud of you, even kept tabs on your career after you enlisted. Pulled strings sometimes to make sure you got the assignments that would challenge you without putting you in unnecessary danger. Caleb absorbs this information, another piece of the complex puzzle that was his father. You knew him well. We served together for nearly 20 years, Victor confirms. Different units officially, but the intelligence community creates its own bonds. Your father trusted me. He pauses, most of the time. Something in Victor's tone catches Caleb's attention, a subtle qualification that triggers his combat-honed instincts. Before he can pursue it, Sarge freezes ahead, hackles rising. The dog's posture signals danger, not immediate but present. Caleb raises his fist, the universal military signal to halt. Victor complies instantly, hand moving to his holstered weapon. Both men scan the surrounding terrain, seeking whatever threat Sarge has detected. The fire lookout tower is visible now, perhaps half a mile ahead, a skeletal structure perched atop a rocky promontory. Its weathered frame stands stark against the blue sky, abandoned but still intact. Movement catches Caleb's eye, a flash of light from near the tower's base. Scope reflection or signal mirror. Someone is already there watching the trail. Company, Caleb murmurs, gesturing subtly toward the reflection. Victor nods, having spotted it too. Options. Circle east through that drainage. Caleb indicates a natural depression that cuts across the landscape, offering concealment for anyone moving through it. Approach from behind their position. The plan is sound, Siam. Standard small unit tactics adapted to their current situation. Avoid direct confrontation, use terrain to gain tactical advantage approach from an unexpected direction. They move carefully, maintaining communication through hand signals and the silent understanding of men who have operated in combat environments. Sarge follows Caleb's lead perfectly, his training overriding any canine instincts to rush ahead or make noise. The drainage provides good cover, deep enough to conceal their movement, with enough vegetation along its edges to break up their silhouettes. They make steady progress, circling wide around the lookout tower's position. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, they reach a position behind and above the tower. From this vantage point, Caleb can see two figures stationed near the base. Professional operators in tactical gear, maintaining watch over the obvious approach routes. Two visible, he whispers to Victor, likely more inside or on the other side. Blackwood's people, Victor asks. Can't tell from here, Caleb replies, but they're set up for an ambush. Someone knew we might head for the tower, which means they're predicting our movements, Victor concludes. They know this area as well as we do. The implications are troubling. Either they're dealing with local operators intimately familiar with the terrain, or someone is feeding information to the pursuit team, tracking their progress and anticipating their decisions. We need to change the equation, Caleb decides. From his go bag, he removes a small metal container similar to the one that held the smoke bombs. This one contains a different type of field expedient, bright magnesium flares of his own manufacture. Distraction, Victor asks, recognizing the contents. Caleb nods. They're watching the obvious approaches. We'll give them something to look at, then circle around to the maintenance ladder on the north side. The plan is simple but effective. Create a diversion that draws attention and resources away from their actual approach route. Caleb positions the magnesium devices at strategic points along the ridge opposite their position, each set with a simple chemical delay fuse. Once these ignite, we'll have approximately 30 seconds of confusion, he explains, enough time to reach the ladder and access the tower before they reorganize. Victor nods, checking his weapon one final time. Sarge remains perfectly still beside them, understanding from his training that absolute silence is required. Caleb activates the delay mechanisms, then signals for them to move toward the tower's north face where a maintenance ladder provides access to the observation deck. They advance quickly but carefully, using natural cover to mask their approach. The first flare ignites with blinding intensity, transforming the afternoon shadows with brilliant white light. The second and third follow in rapid succession, creating a pattern that suggests movement along the ridgeline. As predicted, the operators at the tower base respond immediately, shifting their attention and weapons toward the perceived threat. In this moment of distraction, Caleb, Victor, and Sarge reach the maintenance ladder. Caleb goes first, climbing with the swift efficiency of a man accustomed to vertical movement under pressure. Victor follows with Sarge held securely in a harness attached to his back, an awkward but functional arrangement they've managed before in similar situations. They reach the observation deck without detection, finding it temporarily unoccupied as the tower's defenders focus on the diversion below. The interior is Spartan, a desk chair, wall-mounted equipment, including binoculars on a swivel mount, paper maps yellowed with age, and storage cabinets containing basic emergency supplies. Clear, Caleb whispers after checking the small space. But not for long. Victor secures the access hatch, engaging a simple lock that will at least slow any attempt to follow them up. Sarge takes up a position near the trap door, his attention focused downward where the pursuit team will eventually appear. Caleb moves to the window, scanning the surrounding terrain with the tower's mounted binoculars. The helicopter is visible again, approaching from the west. A civilian Bell model modified for surveillance operations. Professional equipment for a professional operation. We're out of options, Victor says, checking his weapons magazine. This position is defensible, short-term, but we're surrounded and outgunned. Caleb continues his survey, his gaze settling on a weathered map pinned to the tower's wall. Something about it catches his attention, newer than the others with handwritten notations in the margins. Looking closer, he recognizes his father's distinctive handwriting, Contingency Route B, Maintenance Access. Victor, he calls softly. Look at this. Victor examines the map, recognition dawning in his eyes. Your father updated the evacuation routes for this region in the 80s, part of his ongoing responsibility to the Silver Shield Protocol. He never stopped protecting it, Caleb realizes. Even decades after the Cold War peaked, he maintained the security measures. Your father understood that some dangers transcend political shifts, Victor explains. The weapon itself was only part of his concern. What truly worried him was the network of individuals willing to use such weapons, a network that evolved rather than disappeared when the Soviet Union collapsed. This alternative route, Caleb indicates the notation. Maintenance access, what does it mean? Victor studies the markings carefully. The bunker has a secondary entrance, a maintenance shaft designed for equipment delivery and emergency evacuation. It's not on any official documentation. Only those directly involved in the facility's operation knew of its existence. And my father made sure you knew, Caleb concludes. Victor hesitates, something unreadable crossing his expression. William and I had our conversations. He never gave specifics, but he prepared for contingencies. Always. From below, the sound of voices indicates the pursuit team has regrouped and is approaching the tower base. Their recovery from the flare diversion had been professional and efficient, exactly what Caleb would expect from experienced operators. Decision time, he says, checking his weapon and ammunition. We make for this bunker using the maintenance access route. The pendant might give us entry once we arrive. The pendant? Victor's attention sharpens. You said you didn't find anything indicating location. Caleb meets his gaze steadily. I said what I needed to say at the time. A moment of tension stretches between them, trust strained by circumstances and revelations. Then Victor nods, accepting Caleb's caution as reasonable given the situation. The bunker is our best option, he agrees. If we can reach it, we might find answers and resources that could change our tactical situation significantly. Shouted commands from below indicate the pursuit team is preparing to ascend to the tower. Their patience has clearly worn thin, their approach becoming more aggressive as the chase extends. We need an exit strategy, Caleb says, examining the tower structure. The observation deck has windows on all four sides with a narrow catwalk circling the exterior. A potential escape route, though, exposed to fire from below. Southside, Victor suggests. The slope is steeper but offers better concealment once we reach the tree line. It's a sound assessment aligning with Caleb's own tactical evaluation. The southern approach would be less monitored precisely because it presents the most challenging terrain, a calculated risk that experienced operators might take. On my signal, Caleb directs, moving to the south-facing window. We'll use the exterior catwalk to reach the corner post, then rappel directly to that rock outcropping. He indicates a natural formation approximately 30 feet below their position. From there, we can access the drainage system that leads toward the location marked on the map. Victor nods, preparing his equipment with practiced efficiency. Sarge remains vigilant by the trap door, his ears tracking the sounds of the pursuit team's approach. The first attempts to breach the access hatch begin, metal against metal, as someone tests the locking mechanism. It won't hold for long against determined, equipped operators. Now, Caleb commands, sliding the window open. The metal frame protests with a rusty screech, but yields enough to allow passage onto the narrow catwalk beyond. They move quickly, Caleb leading with Sarge harnessed to his back, Victor following closely. The catwalk creaks alarmingly under their weight. Decades of exposure to Nevada's harsh climate have compromised its structural integrity. Reaching the corner post, Caleb secures his rappelling line and performs a quick safety check. The hatch begins to give way behind them, the pursuit team's persistence paying off as the aging lock mechanism fails. Go, Victor urges, covering their position as Caleb and Sarge prepare to descend. The rappel is fast and controlled, Caleb's military training guiding his movements despite the awkward addition of Sarge's weight on his back. They reach the rock outcropping just as the hatch bursts open above angry shouts and the metallic sounds of weapons being readied echoing from the tower. Victor follows immediately, his descent slightly less graceful but equally effective. As his feet touch the outcropping, the first shots ring out from above. Suppressed weapons firing in controlled bursts that impact the rocks around them. Move, Caleb orders, already navigating toward the drainage channel that represents their best escape route. Sarge runs beside him now, released from the harness and moving with the fluid grace of a military working dog despite his age. The drainage offers immediate concealment, a natural channel cut into the landscape by seasonal water flows. Its depth varies from 3 to 6 feet, providing good cover while allowing rapid movement downslope toward their objective. Behind them, the pursuit team is deploying rapidly from the tower, splitting into smaller units to cover multiple potential escape routes. Their tactical discipline remains impressive. These are not amateurs, but highly trained professionals executing a well-rehearsed containment protocol. We have maybe 5 minutes before they establish a perimeter, Victor estimates as they move quickly through the drainage channel. The helicopter will be their primary tracking asset now. As if summoned by his words, the aircraft appears overhead, its rotor sound building as it approaches their position. The Bell's modified systems likely include thermal imaging capabilities, a significant advantage in tracking fugitives through rugged terrain. We need to break line of sight with the air asset, Caleb says, scanning the landscape ahead. There. He points to a natural cave formation visible in the rocky hillside approximately 200 meters ahead. That should mask our thermal signatures temporarily. They push forward with renewed urgency, moving as quickly as the rough terrain allows. The helicopter circles overhead, its search pattern tightening as the operators narrow their focus to the drainage channel. The cave entrance appears as a dark shadow against the sunlit rock face, not large but sufficient for their needs. As they approach, Caleb notices something that makes his combat instincts flare, fresh marks on the surrounding rocks. Subtle signs that this opening has seen recent human activity. Wait, he cautions, slowing their advance. Something's not right. Victor tenses beside him, hand moving to his weapon. Trap. Maybe. Caleb examines the cave entrance more carefully, noting the 2 clean edges, where vegetation has been recently cleared, the slight discoloration of the surrounding soil that suggests human disturbance. Sarge's reaction confirms his suspicions. The dog approaches the entrance cautiously, the nose working the air currents that flow from the darkness beyond. His posture shifts subtly, and not alarm, but recognition. This place is familiar to him somehow. Sarge knows this place, Caleb observes with surprise. Or what's inside it, Victor suggests. The helicopter sound intensifies as it makes another pass, forcing a decision. Remain exposed to aerial surveillance in the rapidly approaching ground teams, or risk the uncertain dangers that might wait within the cave. We go in, Caleb decides, but carefully, standard close quarters protocol. Victor nods, shifting his weapon to a ready position appropriate for confined spaces. Sarge moves ahead slightly, his training making him the ideal point man for potentially dangerous interior environments. The cave entrance gives way to a narrow tunnel that extends deeper into the hillside. Natural at first glance, but as they advance, Caleb notices subtle signs of modification, slight widening at key points, the floor more level than erosion alone would create. Someone has enhanced this passage while taking care to maintain its natural appearance. After approximately 50 feet, the tunnel opens into a larger chamber where the darkness is absolute. Caleb activates a small tactical flashlight, its beam cutting through the blackness to reveal a space that triggers immediate recognition. This is no natural cave formation. The walls are reinforced with concrete and steel supports the floor smooth and leveled for operational use. Equipment racks line one wall, though they stand empty now. A desk and communication station occupy another corner, their surfaces covered with dust, but clearly military-grade installations. Forward operating base, Victor identifies immediately, Cold War era by the look of it. In part of the Silver Shield network, Caleb concludes the pieces falling into place. My father established rally points and emergency facilities throughout the region. This must be one of them. The discovery changes their tactical situation significantly. No longer simply fugitives in hostile terrain, they now stand in a facility designed specifically for the contingencies they face. A safe house created by William Morgan decades ago for exactly this type of scenario. Sarge moves confidently through the space, his behavior suggesting familiarity. The dog approaches a metal cabinet secured with a combination lock, sitting before it expectantly. He's been here before, Caleb realizes with surprise. With my father. William used to bring it his dogs on inspection tours, Victor confirms. Said they needed to know the evacuation routes as well as he did. Never thought he'd actually use them, but your father was thorough. Caleb examines the combination lock, an old mechanical model without electronic components, designed to function indefinitely without power or maintenance. The type of technology his father would trust for long-term security. Any idea on the combination, he asks Victor. Victor shakes his head. William kept certain details compartmentalized, even from those he worked with closely. Caleb considers the problem, then reaches into his pocket for the silver pendant. Examining it carefully in the flashlight beam, he studies the pattern of markings around its edge, a sequence of numbers disguised within the decorative engraving. Worth a try, he murmurs, rotating the combination dials to match the sequence embedded in the pendant design. The lock yields with a satisfying click, the mechanism engaging smoothly despite decades without use. Caleb opens the cabinet to reveal its contents. Military-grade communication equipment, weapons, ammunition, survival supplies, and most importantly, maps and documentation. Among the papers is a sealed envelope marked simply, "For Caleb, when needed." His father's handwriting. A message prepared years ago, waiting patiently in this hidden sanctuary for the moment it would be required. Caleb breaks the seal with steady hands, unfolding the pages within to reveal his father's final communication. Words written by a man who anticipated dangers his son would face long after his own death. Caleb, the letter begins. If you're reading this, then the contingencies I spent my life preparing for have finally materialized. The weapon is secure, but the greater danger was always the network of individuals willing to use it. Infiltrators whose loyalty lies elsewhere. Trust no one completely, not even those who served alongside me. The pendant will guide you to the final repository, but remember, what matters isn't the weapon itself, but the evidence secured with it. Evidence that could still save what we fought to protect. Your father, William. Caleb looks up from the letter, its implications settling into place alongside everything else he's learned today. His father had anticipated betrayal, had prepared for it meticulously, had left breadcrumbs that only his son would recognize and follow. The helicopter sound has faded, the search patterns shifting away from their location as the pursuit team explores other possibilities. A temporary reprieve, but valuable nonetheless. What now? Victor asks, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Caleb carefully refolds his father's letter, securing it in his pocket. Now we find what my father protected all these years. The pendant shows the way to the main facility. We just need to follow the map. Among the documents from the cabinet, one stands out. A detailed topographical survey of the surrounding region, with multiple locations marked in his father's distinctive hand. One such marking, circled and labeled Primary Repository, corresponds precisely with the pattern engraved on the silver pendant. 3 miles northeast. Caleb determines studying the coordinates. Through difficult terrain, but manageable if we move carefully. Victor examines the map over his shoulder, his expression thoughtful. Your father planned thoroughly. This route avoids obvious choke points and observation positions. Natural pathways that would be virtually invisible to anyone not familiar with the local geography. That was his way, Caleb acknowledges. Meticulous, always 3 steps ahead. The revelation of this hidden facility and his father's final message have shifted something fundamental in Caleb's understanding of the situation. What began as a mystery about strange behavior from his dog has evolved into something far larger. A decade-spanning conspiracy with tentacles reaching into the present day, and his father standing as a solitary guardian against forces that never truly disappeared when the Cold War officially ended. Now that responsibility has passed to him, the son following in his father's footsteps, protecting truths that others would destroy, securing evidence that may yet serve justice despite the decades that have passed. We should gather what supplies we can. Caleb decides, turning back to the cabinet. Communications weapons, whatever might give us an advantage. As they inventory the available resources, the true extent of William Morgan's preparation becomes clear. Everything needed for extended field operations has been provided. Compact, durable, and selected with the expert judgment of a career military officer who understood precisely what would be required in a crisis. Among the supplies, Caleb discovers something unexpected: a small metal box containing old photographs. Images of his father in uniform standing alongside fellow officers at various installations. One photo in particular catches his attention: William Morgan and a much younger Victor Reynolds, both in dress uniform, at some formal military function, smiling for the camera. West Point, 1973. Victor identifies, looking over Caleb's shoulder. The beginning of a long professional relationship. Caleb studies the image, noting the easy camaraderie between the two men, a friendship forged in shared service and sacrifice. But his father's final warning echoes in his mind: trust no one completely, not even those who served alongside me. The contradiction settles uncomfortably as Caleb continues gathering supplies. Victor Reynolds, his former commanding officer, his father's colleague, possibly the only person who truly understands the scope of what they're facing. Yet his father's letter suggests caution, even suspicion. Ready, Victor asks, having assembled his own kit from the available resources. Caleb nods, shouldering the pack he's prepared. Sarge stands at attention, sensing the imminent departure. Together, they represent a formidable small unit: 2 experienced combat veterans and a military working dog, equipped and determined. Before leaving, Caleb examines the facility one last time, committing its layout to memory. This hidden outpost, one of many his father established throughout the region, represents a legacy of vigilance that transcends conventional military service. William Morgan hadn't simply retired. He had continued his mission, maintaining watch over secrets that retained their power to shape the present despite their origins in a conflict most believe long concluded. Let's move, Caleb says finally. We follow my father's path to the end. The Shadow Watcher's mission continues, passed from father to son, a legacy of duty that transcends generations and remains as vital today as when William Morgan first accepted his responsibility as guardian of these dangerous truths. The journey from the hidden outpost follows William Morgan's meticulously planned route, a winding path through terrain few would willingly navigate. Narrow ravines give way to steep rock faces, followed by dense stands of pinyon pine that offer concealment from aerial observation. Nature itself becomes an ally, providing cover where man-made structures cannot. Caleb leads the way, moving with the practiced efficiency of a veteran operator. The silver pendant hangs around his neck. Now its weight a constant reminder of the responsibility he's inherited. Sarge trots at his side, occasionally ranging ahead to scout potential dangers of the old dog's training overriding the fatigue that must be building in his aging muscles. Victor follows closely, his eyes constantly scanning their back trail for signs of pursuit. The helicopter's distant thrum comes and goes, sometimes fading entirely, other times building to a concerning proximity before shifting away again. Their pursuers haven't abandoned the search, merely expanded its parameters. The sun begins its westward descent, casting long shadows across the Nevada landscape. Time is becoming a factor. Darkness will provide additional concealment, but it will also make navigation more challenging across this treacherous terrain. 3 miles in this environment might as well be 30. Each step must be placed with care, each route selection evaluated for both tactical advantage and physical feasibility. A twisted ankle or strained knee could transform their escape into a desperate last stand. They pause briefly in the shadow of a massive boulder formation, taking the opportunity to hydrate and reorient. Caleb studies the map recovered from his father's outpost, comparing the marked route with the terrain ahead. Half a mile to the next waypoint. Then we descend into what looks like an old mining complex. Comstock Mining Corporation. The civilian front that concealed the entire Silver Shield operation. Your father selected this location carefully, remote enough for security, but with legitimate mining operations in the region to explain the activity. Convenient. Mining creates its own disturbances, blasting, excavation, heavy equipment, perfect cover for constructing underground facilities. That was the beauty of it. Even the miners themselves didn't know what was happening beneath certain sections, classified compartments within an otherwise normal operation. Sarge suddenly tenses his attention fixed on something to the west. His posture doesn't suggest immediate danger, more like recognition of something familiar. What is it, boy? In the distance, barely visible against the rocky landscape, stands a small structure, a maintenance shed or equipment storage building, its weathered exterior blending almost perfectly with the surrounding terrain. Another outpost. Possible. Your father established several throughout the region, fallback positions, supply caches, observation posts. The full network was never documented in any single location. Compartmentalization. The standard intelligence protocol. No one individual possesses all information, reducing vulnerability to compromise. William Morgan had applied military discipline to what became a deeply personal mission after his official retirement. They approached the structure cautiously, using available cover to mask their movement. The building appears abandoned, its metal exterior, rusted windows, obscured by decades of dust and grime. No signs of recent activity, no indicators of surveillance or occupation. Yet Sarge's behavior suggests otherwise. The dog moves directly to the door, sitting before it with the expectant posture of a soldier awaiting orders. He's been here before, perhaps many times, accompanying William Morgan on his solitary mission. The door is secured with a padlock, old but well-maintained, protected from the elements by a simple metal shroud. Caleb examines it closely, noting its military-grade construction, not something that yields to bolt cutters or improvised tools. The pendant, again. Caleb studies the silver trinket, rotating it to examine the pattern of numbers concealed within its ornate engravings, a different sequence than the one used at the previous location, his father's security protocols evolving with each installation. The lock opens with a satisfying click, the mechanism still functioning smoothly despite years of exposure to Nevada's harsh climate. The door resists briefly, then yields with a protesting groan of neglected hinges. Inside, dust motes dance in the shafts of late afternoon sunlight that penetrate the grimy windows. The space is small but efficiently organized. Storage shelves along one wall, a simple desk and chair, filing cabinets secured with combination locks. A generator sits in one corner alongside communications equipment that appears decades old but meticulously maintained. Another safe house. Your father didn't leave anything to chance. Caleb's attention is drawn to a large map mounted on the wall, a topographical survey of the entire region with multiple locations marked in his father's distinctive handwriting. Red circles indicate what appear to be security checkpoints. Blue squares mark supply caches or safe houses like this one. And a single location approximately 2 miles northeast of their current position is marked with a black star labeled simply Alpha. That's our destination, the primary repository, the Silver Shield facility, where your father secured both the weapon and his evidence. How did he maintain all this after retirement on his own? Not entirely on his own. There were others who shared his concerns, a network of veterans and intelligence professionals who recognized the same threats. Most have passed now or retired to obscurity. Your father was the last active guardian, and now it falls to me. He turns his attention to the filing cabinets, attempting the same combination that opened the padlock. The mechanism yields revealing folders organized with military precision: surveillance reports, personnel assessments, communications, transcripts. A chronicle of William Morgan's decades-long vigilance. One folder stands out. Newer than the others, its label reading simply Blackwood. Inside, Caleb finds surveillance photographs of Mason Blackwood at various locations around Washington, D.C., meeting with individuals whose faces have been circled in red marker. Accompanying notes detail dates, times, and brief assessments of these encounters. My father was watching Blackwood, for years apparently. Victor examines the photographs with evident surprise. These go back nearly a decade. William never mentioned this surveillance operation to me. Compartmentalization. He didn't tell anyone everything. The final page in the folder contains a handwritten note in William Morgan's precise script: Blackwood connected to Redwood. Primary asset or controller. Evidence suggests latter. Continued observation essential. Redwood. Victor's expression changes subtly. A tightening around the eyes, a momentary tension, quickly controlled. A code name from the old days. An unidentified Soviet asset believed to have penetrated American intelligence at the highest levels. Your father hunted Redwood for decades without confirming their identity, and he connected Blackwood to this operation, apparently. Though without seeing his evidence, it's difficult to assess the validity of the connection. The evidence would be at the primary facility, along with everything else my father protected. The distant sound of the helicopter returns, growing steadily louder, the search patterns shifting in their direction once more. Their window of opportunity is narrowing as daylight fades and the pursuit intensifies. We need to move. That aircraft has thermal imaging capabilities. Once darkness falls, our heat signatures will stand out against the cooling landscape. Caleb gathers what useful intelligence he can from the outpost. Updated maps, recent surveillance notes, a more detailed schematic of the primary facility's approach routes. Every piece of information improves their tactical position marginally, though they remain significantly outnumbered and outgunned. Before departing, he discovers one final resource: a hidden compartment beneath the desk containing emergency communications equipment. Unlike the older systems visible in the outpost, this setup appears relatively modern. A satellite phone with secure transmission capabilities, the battery indicator showing a partial charge. My father updated his equipment. William always adapted. He understood that technology evolves and security measures must evolve with it. The communications device represents a potential game changer, a means to call for assistance or at least document what they have discovered. Caleb pockets it carefully, another resource for whatever confrontation awaits them at the primary facility. They exit the outpost, securing it behind them as if preserving a monument to William Morgan's foresight and dedication. The sun now hangs low on the western horizon, painting the landscape in deepening shades of orange and red. Beautiful in a desolate way, the harsh magnificence of a land that has never been truly tamed by human presence. Their path follows a dry creek bed that offers both concealment and relatively easy travel, a natural corridor cutting through the rugged terrain toward their objective. As they move, Caleb finds his thoughts returning to the photograph he discovered earlier. His father and Victor, in their younger days, colleagues and apparently friends across decades of service. Yet his father's warning remains: trust no one completely, not even those who served alongside me. The contradiction troubles him, introducing uncertainty where certainty would be tactically advantageous. Victor Reynolds, his former commanding officer, his father's colleague, a man whose actions thus far have aligned perfectly with their shared objective of reaching the Silver Shield facility. Yet something held William Morgan back from complete trust, even decades into their professional relationship. The creek bed deepens as they progress, its walls rising to provide better concealment, but also creating potential vulnerability, a natural channel that could become a fatal funnel if discovered by their pursuers. Caleb maintains a steady pace, balancing the need for speed against the requirement for tactical awareness. Sarge ranges ahead, his military training making him an ideal point man despite his age. The dog navigates the difficult terrain with surprising agility, occasionally pausing to test the air or examine the ground before proceeding. His value in this operation cannot be overstated: enhanced senses, absolute loyalty, and the ability to detect threats beyond human perception. As the last direct light fades from the sky, leaving only the deepening blue of approaching night, they reach a point where the creek bed intersects with what appears to be an old mining road, rutted and overgrown but still discernible, cutting across the landscape toward the northeast. Service road for the mining operation. This would have connected the main facility with supply depots and administrative buildings. Probably hasn't seen regular use since the 60s. Recent tire tracks. Someone's been using this route within the past few days. Blackwood's people, most likely. Professional operation like this would include advanced reconnaissance of all approach routes. The tactical situation grows increasingly complex. Using the road offers faster movement but greater exposure. Continuing cross-country provides better concealment but slower progress. With darkness falling and pursuit ongoing, neither option presents clear advantage. We follow the road but maintain offset. Parallel movement 20 meters into the brush, using the road as navigation reference without exposing ourselves directly. Victor nods approval. The decision aligns with standard small unit tactics for movement through potentially observed territory. Maintain route awareness without becoming predictable targets along obvious approaches. They advance steadily through the gathering darkness, maintaining communications through hand signals and the silent understanding of men who have operated in combat environments. Sarge follows Caleb's lead perfectly, his training overriding any canine instincts to range 2-1 ahead or make noise. After 30 minutes of careful progress, a structure appears in the distance. Silhouetted against the darkening sky, its angular form unmistakably man-made among the organic shapes of the desert landscape. A building of some kind, substantial in size, positioned where the old mining road terminates against a hillside. The main entrance, administrative building for Comstock Mining Corporation, concealed the primary access point to the underground facility. Caleb studies the structure through his compact binoculars. The building shows decades of abandonment. Windows broken or boarded over, exterior weathered by countless seasons of Nevada's harsh climate. Yet subtle details suggest recent activity. Areas where dust has been disturbed, faint footprints leading to and from the main entrance, a section of roof recently repaired. Someone's been maintaining minimal functionality, keeping it secured but accessible. Your father, most likely, part of his ongoing stewardship. Or Blackwood's people preparing for their operation. Movement catches Caleb's attention, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper darkness beside the building. Then another, human figures moving with tactical discipline, establishing a perimeter around the structure. Professional operators deploying in standard security formation. Blackwood's team is already here. They've secured the main entrance. Expected, but the maintenance access your father marked on his maps should remain unknown to them. It wasn't documented in any official plans. The maintenance access, their alternate route into the facility, potentially bypassing Blackwood's security cordon entirely. According to William Morgan's notes, it's located approximately half a mile east of the main entrance, concealed within a natural rock formation that would appear insignificant to anyone not specifically looking for it. They adjust their course accordingly, circling wide to approach from the east while maintaining maximum distance from the observed security positions. The terrain grows increasingly difficult, rocky outcroppings and steep slopes requiring careful navigation in the deepening darkness. Sarge suddenly freezes his posture, signaling potential threat. Caleb and Victor immediately take cover, weapons ready, as they scan for whatever danger the dog has detected. Through his night vision monocular, Caleb identifies the problem. A 2-man security team patrolling the eastern perimeter, moving methodically along a predetermined route that will intersect with their planned approach. Professional operators conducting standard security sweeps of all potential access points. Blackwood is thorough. These aren't just rent-a-cops. Those are experienced personnel deploying proper tactical protocols. The patrol passes within 30 meters of their position, close enough that Caleb can make out details of their equipment. High-end tactical gear, suppressed weapons, night vision capabilities. Every aspect of their operation screams military precision and substantial financial backing. Once the patrol moves beyond effective detection range, Caleb signals for them to continue adjusting their route to account for the observed security pattern. They proceed with heightened caution, each step carefully placed, each movement calculated to minimize sound and visibility. According to the maps recovered from William Morgan's outpost, the maintenance access should be located in a specific rock formation, a natural chimney in the hillside that conceals a man-made tunnel leading directly to the lower levels of the facility. Finding such a specific feature in near darkness presents a significant challenge even with night vision equipment. Sarge proves his value, once again moving confidently toward a particular section of the hillside that appears indistinguishable from countless similar formations. The dog's behavior suggests recognition. This specific location holds meaning for him, perhaps from accompanying William Morgan on previous visits. As they approach, what initially appeared to be natural features resolve into deliberate construction disguised as geology. A narrow opening reinforced with concealed steel supports its entrance, arranged to appear as nothing more than a shadow among shadows when viewed from any distance. Your father was an artist. This is invisible unless you're standing right on top of it. The entrance is secured with another specialized lock, military-grade hardware concealed within the rock facade. Caleb examines it carefully in the dim light, identifying it as a more sophisticated version of those used at the previous locations. The pendants encoded sequence might work here as well, but the mechanism appears to have additional security features. Biometric. Your father upgraded security on the primary access points. DNA or fingerprint recognition most likely. My DNA would match closely enough to my father's to trigger familial recognition. These systems typically allow for genetic variants within family lines. He places his palm against the scanner, feeling the slight warmth that indicates active technology despite the facility's apparent abandonment. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a series of soft clicks indicates internal mechanisms engaging, and the disguised door shifts slightly inward. Blood will tell. Your father planned for you to follow in his footsteps, whether you knew it or not. The maintenance access opens to reveal a narrow tunnel extending into the hillside. Concrete walls and floor steel supports at regular intervals, emergency lighting that activates automatically as they enter. The construction is military grade, designed to withstand significant stress, even potentially a nearby nuclear detonation. Sarge enters without hesitation, clearly familiar with this environment. Caleb and Victor follow, securing the entrance behind them. The tunnel descends at a steady grade, penetrating deeper into the earth with each step. The air grows cooler, carrying the faint mineral scent of underground spaces and the subtle mechanical traces of ventilation systems still functioning after decades. The facility was designed for long-term operation with minimal maintenance. Self-contained power generation, water purification, air filtration, all the essentials for extended occupation if necessary. Cold War paranoia at its finest, building bunkers to survive the apocalypse. Not paranoia if they're really out to get you. The Soviets had similar facilities, deeper in many cases. The arms race extended underground just as it did into space. After several minutes of steady descent, the tunnel terminates at another security door, heavier than the entrance with multiple locking mechanisms and another biometric scanner. The pendants encoded sequence combined with Caleb's genetic authentication once again grants access the massive door opening with surprising smoothness, considering its age and weight. Beyond lies a small antechamber serving as a security checkpoint, weapon lockers along one wall, decontamination equipment, communication systems. Everything appears operational despite decades of minimal use, a testament to Cold War engineering and in William Morgan's meticulous maintenance. Welcome to Silver Shield, one of America's best-kept Cold War secrets. The antechamber connects to a main corridor extending in both directions, east toward what schematics identified as research and storage areas, west toward command and communication centers. Emergency lighting provides minimal illumination, creating pools of light separated by sections of shadow, a chiaroscuro effect that enhances the facility's abandoned atmosphere. The weapon would be secured in the primary storage vault, along with any documentation your father protected, east corridor based on the facility schematic. They proceed cautiously, alert for any sign that Blackwood's team might have already penetrated the facility through the main entrance. The corridor shows no evidence of recent human presence. Dust undisturbed on horizontal surfaces, air still, and undisturbed by movement. Their entrance appears to have preceded any potential breach from above. The east corridor terminates at a massive vault door reminiscent of bank security systems. Circular steel with multiple locking mechanisms controlled by both mechanical and electronic systems. A control panel beside the door features both a keypad for code entry and another biometric scanner for authentication. Maximum security, the heart of the facility. Caleb examines the control panel, noting its advanced design relative to the technology available when the facility was constructed. Another of his father's upgrades, maintaining the original systems while enhancing them with more contemporary security features. The pendant sequence combined with biometric authentication once again proves effective, the massive vault mechanisms engaging with hydraulic precision. The door swings open slowly, revealing the chamber beyond, the secure heart of Project Silver Shield, and the repository of secrets that have remained hidden for decades. The vault interior illuminates automatically as they enter, revealing a space approximately 30 feet square. The room is dominated by a central pedestal surrounded by concentric security measures, laser tripwires, pressure plates, and motion sensors, creating a formidable defense in depth. On the pedestal rests a rectangular case approximately 2 feet long, military-grade aluminum with multiple locking mechanisms. Even at this distance, Caleb recognizes it from his military training, a tactical nuclear transport container designed to securely house a compact atomic demolition munition. The Silver Shield device, a 2-kiloton nuclear weapon small enough to fit in a backpack. One of 6 manufactured under Project Comstock, and the only one never officially decommissioned. Around the perimeter of the room, steel filing cabinets stand in ordered rows, each secured with combination locks. Their government-issue design is unmistakable. Standard CIA document storage from the Cold War era, built to protect classified information from both physical and environmental threats. The Intelligence Archive. Decades of counterintelligence operations documented and preserved. My father's legacy. As they absorb the significance of the chamber, a subtle detail catches Caleb's attention. A small object on the floor near one of the filing cabinets. A brass shell casing recently ejected, its surface still gleaming in the emergency lighting. Down. The bullet strikes the wall where he had been standing moments before sending concrete fragments flying. Victor takes cover behind equipment racks while Sarge positions himself protectively near Caleb, facing the direction of the attack. A shadowed alcove near the rear of the chamber, where an emergency exit sign glows with dim red light. Second entrance, maintenance shaft. It shouldn't be accessible without authorization. Clearly, someone disagreed. From the shadows emerges a familiar figure, Mason Blackwood, holding a suppressed pistol with professional confidence. Behind him, 2 operators in tactical gear secure the maintenance shaft entrance, their weapons covering the room with disciplined efficiency. Lieutenant Morgan, I hoped you'd lead us here eventually, though I must admit you took a more circuitous route than I anticipated. How did you access the maintenance shaft? Let's just say not all of Colonel Morgan's trusted associates remained equally trustworthy after his death. Loyalty becomes a flexible concept when sufficient incentives are applied. Victor shifts position slightly, attempting to gain a better firing angle. One of Blackwood's operators tracks the movement, the laser sight from his weapon, creating a red dot on Victor's chest. A silent warning. The weapon and the files, that's all we require. Provide them and this ends peacefully. You expect us to hand over a nuclear weapon? The device is a relic, Lieutenant. Interesting from a historical perspective, but hardly useful in modern warfare. Its plutonium core degraded years ago. The documentation, however, that remains very much relevant. The revelation about the weapon's condition is new information, something Victor hadn't mentioned. Caleb files this away, another piece in the increasingly complex puzzle. Who are you really working for, Blackwood? Currently, various interested parties who prefer their family histories remain unexamined. Originally the same agency as your father, though, in a somewhat different capacity. CIA, counterintelligence. Close enough for government work. Though these days the lines between government and private enterprise have become rather blurred. Efficiency through privatization. The American way. As the conversation unfolds, Caleb notices Sarge's attention has shifted, not toward Blackwood and his obvious threat, but toward Victor. The dog's posture has changed subtly, attention indicating potential danger from an unexpected direction. Following the dog's cue, Caleb glances at Victor and notices something alarming. The former officer's weapon is now trained not on Blackwood, but on Caleb himself. The betrayal his father had warned about wasn't hypothetical, but immediate and present. It seems we've reached the awkward part of the evening, when old allegiances reveal themselves. Victor. I'm sorry, Caleb. This was never about you. Your father identified me in his files. Correctly, I might add. My name is on that list along with others who served different masters during the Cold War. Soviet asset all these years. Intelligence officer for a government that no longer exists, serving causes that have evolved considerably since those ideological days. The revelation lands like a physical blow. Victor Reynolds, his former commanding officer, a decorated American soldier, had been a Soviet operative embedded within the U.S. military. The betrayal transcends personal loyalty, striking at the core of everything Caleb has served and believed in. You used me to find this place, to access my father's archives. I used available resources to complete a mission, something you understand perfectly well, Lieutenant. Blackwood appears amused by the unfolding drama. Fascinating as these revelations are, we're operating on a timeline. The files, please. All of them. And then what? You disappear with decades of intelligence on Soviet penetration of American institutions, bury the truth permanently. The truth is rarely as valuable as people imagine, particularly when it's half a century old. What matters is perception, narrative, legacy. Those files contain information that would rewrite portions of American history, destroy reputations, undermine institutions, create division where stability is needed. They contain evidence of treason, of Americans who betrayed their country for ideology, money, or compromise. They contain allegations compiled by a paranoid cold warrior during the height of McCarthyism. Context matters, Lieutenant. One era's traitor is another's pragmatic realist. The standoff continues, tension building in the confined space. Caleb maintains his position, evaluating options that grow increasingly limited. With Victor's betrayal, the tactical situation has deteriorated significantly. Blackwood's team at the maintenance entrance, Victor's weapon trained on him in limited cover in the vault chamber. Yet something about the situation doesn't align with Caleb's military instincts. Blackwood's casual approach, his willingness to engage in conversation rather than immediate action, suggests he's waiting for something, or someone. You're not here alone. This is just the advance team. Blackwood's expression confirms the assessment. Perceptive, Lieutenant. My employers prefer redundancy in operations of this significance. The primary extraction team will arrive shortly from professionals with specific expertise in document handling and secure transport. The helicopter, that's why it maintained distance during the pursuit. It's bringing in specialists. The distant sound of rotor blades confirms this analysis. The helicopter approaching from the south, likely following the transponder signal from Blackwood's team. Time is running out. Whatever happens next, the files cannot fall into Blackwood's hands. Not when they represent the culmination of William Morgan's life work and potentially impact national security even decades later. My father anticipated this day. He knew eventually someone would come for his evidence, would try to bury the truth he spent his career uncovering. His hand moved slowly toward his jacket pocket. Blackwood's operators tracked the movement, weapons trained on him, with unwavering precision. Easy. Nothing heroic, please. We can all walk away from this. William built a fail-safe into the system, a final protocol if the facility was ever compromised by hostile forces. From his pocket, he withdraws the satellite phone recovered from his father's outpost. Simple military grade with encryption capabilities beyond standard civilian technology. I activated the emergency protocol 20 minutes ago when we first entered the facility. A dedicated team is en route, legitimate government personnel with proper authorization to handle this material. Blackwood's expression reveals genuine surprise, the first crack in his professional facade. You're bluffing. No active government agency would touch this material. The political implications alone would ensure it remains buried. The Oversight Committee disagrees, particularly given recent foreign intelligence activities on American soil. Context matters, Mr. Blackwood, as you yourself noted. Today's political climate has created renewed interest in historical foreign influence operations. The tactical situation has fundamentally shifted. What began as a race to secure hidden Cold War secrets has transformed into a battle between competing government interests, those who would expose the truth and those who would suppress it for political or personal protection. Victor's expression has changed calculation, replacing confidence as he reassesses the evolving scenario. Which oversight committee specifically? The one my father reported to for 30 years. The one that authorized Project Comstock originally and maintained its black budget through 7 administrations. Pure improvisation, but delivered with the conviction of absolute certainty. In tactical situations, perceived reality often matters more than actual fact. If Blackwood and Victor believe an extraction team is inbound, their decision matrix changes accordingly. The facility's lights flicker momentarily, a power fluctuation that suggests external interference with the aging electrical systems. The backup generators engage automatically, maintaining illumination but indicating escalating attempts to breach the facility's security. They're not waiting for a polite entrance. Your timeline just shortened considerably, Lieutenant. Caleb makes his decision. Blackwood, you've miscalculated. Those files aren't leaving this facility. Not with you, not with Victor, not with anyone who would use them to protect traitors rather than expose them. Bold statement from a man in your tactical position. Tell me something. Did you know Victor was on my father's list when you sent him to find me? Or was that just convenient coincidence? The question creates a momentary tension between Blackwood and Victor, a subtle shift in their dynamic that confirms Caleb's suspicion. These aren't truly allies, but temporary collaborators with potentially competing agendas. Professional courtesy. Victor's history with both you and your father made him the logical choice to make initial contact. Efficiency dictates using available assets appropriately. And once the files are secured, what happens to assets that have outlived their usefulness? The question hangs in the air, creating another microscopic fracture in the alliance of convenience between Blackwood and Victor. Professional operators understand the concept of liability elimination. Assets disposed of when they no longer serve a purpose or potentially become compromising. Victor's weapon shifts slightly, no longer focused exclusively on Caleb, but positioned to pivot toward Blackwood if necessary. Self-preservation asserting itself against operational discipline. The helicopter sound has grown louder, perhaps 3 minutes from arrival based on Caleb's assessment. Whatever happens next needs to happen quickly before reinforcements change the equation entirely. Caleb catches Sarge's attention with a subtle hand signal, a command they've practiced countless times in combat situations. The dog responds instantly, understanding what's expected. Lower your weapons, back toward the maintenance shaft. Now. Or what, Lieutenant? I wasn't talking to you. With a sharp whistle, he activates Sarge's training. The German Shepherd explodes into action, targeting the nearest of Blackwood's operators with military precision. The attack isn't aimed to maim, but to disarm, clamping down on the man's weapon arm with controlled force, driving him to the ground in a maneuver practiced countless times in Afghanistan. In the moment of confusion, Caleb moves, years of combat training translating into fluid action. He targets Blackwood, directly closing distance before the man can bring his weapon to bear effectively. A precise strike to Blackwood's wrist sends the pistol clattering across the floor, followed by a combat-honed sequence that ends with Blackwood pinned against the wall, immobilized by leverage pressure against key joints. The remaining operator hesitates, caught between targeting Caleb and addressing the immediate threat of Sarge. This moment of indecision proves costly, as Victor uses the distraction to reposition himself, his weapon now covering the operator with unwavering precision. Stand down, weapon down, hands where I can see them. The operator complies reluctantly, recognizing the futility of resistance in the current configuration. Sarge continues to hold the first man pinned to the floor, awaiting further commands from Caleb. Victor, interesting choice. Pragmatic. Blackwood was never going to honor any arrangement. Once he had the files, we'd both become liabilities requiring elimination. Professional courtesy. The intelligence community has protocols for these situations. Exactly why I'm keeping my options open. Self-preservation trumps operational parameters when dealing with privateers like Aegis. The helicopter has reached the vicinity of the facility, its rotor sound now directly overhead as it presumably searches for a landing zone near the mine entrance. Time is running critically short. So where does this leave us? You're still on my father's list. Those files still contain evidence against you. Evidence from a different era. I served Soviet intelligence, yes, but that government no longer exists. The Russia I occasionally assist today is not the Soviet Union I served during the Cold War. Treason doesn't expire, and my father continued updating his files until his death. This isn't just Cold War history. It's an ongoing counterintelligence operation that extends into the present day. This information creates visible concern in Victor's expression. The realization that William Morgan's surveillance might have documented more recent activities than he had anticipated. What exactly did your father know about my current operations? Enough to maintain separate files on you specifically, updated regularly with copies secured at multiple locations. Deadman switches designed to activate if anything happened to him under suspicious circumstances. Another calculated bluff, but one rooted in William Morgan's demonstrated thoroughness and foresight. The man who maintained this network of outposts and security measures for decades would certainly have implemented additional protocols to protect his most sensitive intelligence. The facility lights flicker again, more pronounced this time. The extraction team is getting closer to breaching the main entrance. Professionals with equipment and expertise focused on accessing the secure vault. We're out of time. Blackwood's extraction team will breach within minutes. They're equipped for this specific operation. We won't hold them off with 2 handguns and a dog, no matter how well trained. Suggestions. Your father's failsafe. Every secure facility of this era had destruction protocols. Measures to ensure sensitive materials couldn't be captured intact. William would have maintained those systems, updated them over the years. And you know this, how? Because I helped him design the original protocols in 1962. Before my change in professional alignment, the facility has demolition charges positioned throughout, shaped charges designed to destroy documentation without causing structural collapse of the mountain itself. Convenient that you mention this now. Self-interest. I'd prefer those files not fall into Blackwood's hands any more than you would. His employers would use them selectively, protecting some former assets while exposing others based on current political utility. At least destruction would be democratic. Everyone's secrets buried equally. The tactical calculus is shifting rapidly. The extraction team will breach soon. Blackwood and his operators are temporarily neutralized but not permanently disabled. Victor represents an unknown quantity, currently aligned with Caleb's immediate objective, but fundamentally untrustworthy based on both his admitted history and William Morgan's warnings. Where's the activation system? Victor indicates a control panel concealed behind one of the equipment racks. Primary failsafe controls. Requires authorization code plus physical key insertion. The pendant should serve as the key. And the code, your father would have updated it regularly. My knowledge is decades out of date. Another obstacle, though potentially surmountable. William Morgan had consistently used the pendant as both physical key and encoded information storage. The pattern of numbers concealed within its ornate engravings serving multiple security functions throughout the facility. Secure these 2 thoroughly. Victor complies with professional efficiency using equipment from the facility's security lockers to restrain the 3 men. Zip ties reinforced with duct tape, simple but effective restraints that will require significant time and effort to escape, even for trained operators. Caleb approaches the control panel, Victor indicated, examining it carefully. The system appears well maintained despite its age, another testament to William Morgan's meticulous stewardship. A small key slot is positioned prominently with a numeric keypad beside it for code entry. The pendant fits perfectly into the slot, confirming its design purpose as the physical key component of the 2-factor authentication system. The numeric keypad awaits the corresponding code, likely derived from the pattern encoded on the pendant itself, but potentially following a transformation algorithm that William Morgan would have updated periodically. Any insight on the code format? 6 digits originally. William favored significant dates in military history, D-Day Midway operations he personally participated in, but that was decades ago. His system likely evolved. The sounds of activity from the direction of the main entrance have grown more pronounced. Mechanical noises suggesting cutting equipment being applied to security doors, radio communications barely audible through the thick concrete walls. The extraction team is making steady progress toward the vault. Caleb studies the pendant, carefully rotating it to examine all aspects of the engraved pattern. The sequence visible along the outer edge consists of 12 digits, possibly a direct code or more likely a base value requiring transformation through an algorithm. William Morgan would have expected his son to deduce. A military mind approaches problems methodically. William Morgan was methodical to his core, his outpost organized with precision, his documentation maintained with meticulous attention to detail. He would have selected a transformation algorithm that balanced security with memorability, something his son could reasonably determine if necessary. The pendant itself offers a clue. Its dual purpose as both map and key, suggesting the transformation might relate to geographical coordinates. The pattern engraved on its face resembles a topographical representation of this specific location, with subtle markings that could indicate reference points within the larger landscape. Coordinates. The last 6 digits would represent seconds in geographical notation. He enters the final 6 digits from the pendant's edge sequence. The keypad remains unresponsive, no indication of acceptance or rejection. Not direct entry, transformation required. Military date format, another possibility given William Morgan's background. Rearranging the 12 digits into month-day-year format produces multiple potential combinations, none immediately revealing themselves as significant. The pendant's weight offers another insight, heavier than it appears, suggesting additional material sealed within its silver exterior. When rotated, something shifts in Shimametain, not loose but repositioning as orientation changes. Gyroscopic. The pendant contains a direction-sensing component. When held in specific orientation, aligned with magnetic north, the pendant's pattern aligns differently, the numbers along the edge shifting into a new configuration that now prominently displays 6 digits in slightly larger engraving than the others. Found it. He enters the highlighted sequence into the control panel's keypad. The system responds immediately, lights changing from standby amber to active green, mechanical components engaging within the wall as the failsafe protocol activates. A small display illuminates, presenting a simple countdown timer, then immediately beginning to decrement. 10 minutes until detonation. Time to leave. That's enough time to clear the facility, but not enough for the extraction team to locate and disarm the charges. The files. We need to verify exactly what my father compiled before we destroy everything. No time. The extraction team will breach the vault within minutes. We need to move now. 2 minutes to confirm what's actually here before it's lost forever. One drawer is labeled simply active, containing more recent documentation with dates extending well into the 2000s. William Morgan had indeed continued his counterintelligence work long after retirement, tracking networks as they evolved from Soviet to Russian control, documenting activities that extended decades beyond the Cold War's official conclusion. And they're prominently positioned within this section, a thick file labeled Reynolds V, Active Asset, Classification Redwood. Found your file. Seems my father knew exactly who you were. Redwood, the asset he never officially identified. The one who escaped detection for decades. The Cold War created divided loyalties, Caleb, ideological commitments that transcended national boundaries. Your father understood that better than most. Why do you think he continued his surveillance long after the Soviet Union collapsed? The networks evolved, adapted to new masters, new objectives. Treason by any other name. Pragmatism. The world isn't divided into heroes and villains, Caleb. Your father saw everything in black and white. Loyalty versus betrayal, patriotism versus treason. Reality exists in shades of gray. We need to move. Whatever you think of me, whatever that file contains, we both die if we're still here when those charges detonate. Maintenance shaft. It should connect to a secondary exit point on the eastern slope, according to my father's maps. What about them? We take Blackwood, leave the operators their folding knife, placed just within reach. Gives them a fighting chance to free themselves if they're quick and skilled. Their choice, their consequences. The countdown continues. 8 minutes remaining before detonation. The extraction team's activities have grown louder, indicating they've breached at least one of the primary security doors leading to the vault. Time is becoming critically short. You're making a mistake, Lieutenant. Those files contain more than you realize. Connections that extend into the present-day networks that evolved rather than disappeared. Exposing them doesn't serve national security. It creates vulnerabilities in critical institutions. Save your breath. You'll need it for the climb. Your father was right about many things, but his perspective was shaped by a different era, a time when loyalties seemed clearer, when the enemy wore a recognizable uniform. Today's reality is more complex. Treason seems pretty straightforward to me. Betraying your country for ideology or money, a simple concept regardless of era. Nations are temporary constructs, Lieutenant. Empires rise and fall. Loyalty to principles rather than borders offers a more consistent ethical framework. Save the philosophy lecture for your interrogation. I'm sure the Oversight Committee will be fascinated by your nuanced perspective on betrayal. The maintenance shaft provides their exit route, a narrow concrete tunnel reinforced with steel supports extending upward at a steep angle toward the surface. Emergency lighting provides minimal illumination, guiding their ascent away from the fail-safe countdown and the approaching extraction team. 7 minutes remain, sufficient time to clear the facility's immediate vicinity before detonation if they maintain steady progress. Blackwood follows between them, Caleb leading with Sarge, Victor covering their rear to prevent any attempted escape or betrayal. Clear. Move quickly. 5 minutes to detonation and we want significant distance before then. 3 minutes remain as they descend the eastern slope moving through scattered pinon pine that provides additional concealment from aerial observation. The helicopter remains focused on the main entrance, its searchlights sweeping the area where vehicles and equipment have been positioned for the extraction operation. They don't know. The extraction team hasn't detected the failsafe activation. They're still focused on breaching the vault. Their mistake. Professional hazard in our line of work. Insufficient intelligence leading to tactical misjudgment. The countdown continues, 2 minutes remaining before detonation. The extraction team's activities have grown louder, indicating they've breached at least one of the primary security doors leading to the vault. Time is becoming critically short. We need to warn them. Tactical error. Reveals our position, compromises our escape, potentially sacrifices our mission for sentimentality. Not sentimentality, principle. We're soldiers, not executioners. Facilities rigged to blow. Less than 2 minutes. Clear the area immediately. Northeast minimum, half-mile distance. Evacuation order. All units withdraw immediately. Repeat immediate withdrawal northeastern sector, half-mile minimum safe distance. Facility destruction imminent. Conscience clear. Clear enough. They reach a rocky outcropping approximately 600 yards from the facility entrance. Not ideal distance for complete safety, but sufficient given the shape charges designed to focus force inward rather than outward. Taking cover behind solid stone, they prepare for the imminent detonation. The final seconds count down the mental counter, reaching zero, the night erupting with controlled violence. The ground trembles beneath them as multiple charges detonate in carefully timed sequence. The facility's main entrance collapses inward, dust and debris billowing outward in a contained cloud that suggests precision engineering rather than indiscriminate destruction. Secondary charges follow seconds later. Systematic elimination of critical areas within the underground complex, methodically destroying documentation and equipment while minimizing structural damage to the mountain itself. William Morgan's final security protocol executes with the same meticulous precision that characterized his entire career. Thorough, controlled, effective without excess. The shape charges perform exactly as designed, focusing destructive force on the sensitive materials while leaving the surrounding geology largely intact. What happens now? You have my file. Partial evidence of activities spanning 5 decades. What do you intend to do with it? That depends on whether you're still Redwood or if your loyalties have shifted again in the decades since my father identified you. Loyalty is a complex concept in our profession, fluid, adapting to changing geopolitical realities. The Soviet Union I served no longer exists. The Russia I occasionally assist bears little resemblance to that ideological construct. Yet you're still working against American interests, still betraying the uniform you wore. I serve interests that transcend national boundaries, as does Blackwood, though he wraps his activities in patriotic rhetoric and privatized efficiency. We're not so different, just serving different masters within the same complex ecosystem. We need to move. The ridgeline to the east offers concealment and multiple evacuation routes toward the highway. The satellite phone, if your oversight committee actually exists now, would be the time to contact them. It exists, though perhaps not exactly as I described it. My father maintained connections with former colleagues, intelligence professionals who shared his concerns about Soviet penetration networks surviving the Cold War's end, informal but effective operating outside official channels, but with contacts throughout the legitimate intelligence community. A shadow network. William always understood the value of parallel systems operating beyond bureaucratic constraints. He called them the watchmen. career intelligence officers who continued monitoring Soviet-origin networks as they evolved into modern Russian operations. The Oversight Committee exists, but not as a government entity, as a coalition of professionals committed to finishing what began during the Cold War. Morgan C. Authentication Delta 794 confirmed. Status report requested. Facility neutralized. Documentation secured or destroyed. Prisoner in custody. High-value intelligence operative identified as Redwood. Extraction coordinates to follow. Maintain current position and await further instructions. Your father's legacy extends further than I anticipated. A contingency network operating decades after the Cold War officially ended. William was always thorough. He understood that conflicts don't end with political declarations. Networks adapt, evolve, find new purposes and masters. The game continues under different names and rules, but with many of the same players. And what happens to me? Your father's network gets custody of Redwood after 50 years of hunting. I imagine they have substantial plans for such a significant asset. That depends partly on you, on what you know about current operations, on your willingness to help dismantle the networks you've served on, whether redemption outweighs punishment in the calculation of national security. Pragmatism again, your father would be disappointed. He saw the world in terms of absolute loyalty and betrayal. No middle ground, no negotiation with those who cross that line. I'm not my father, though I respect his principles and his persistence. The satellite phone activates again, its secure channel establishing communication with the Watchmen network. Extraction team inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Secure position and prepare for handover. There's something you should know, Lieutenant. Something about your father and your wife. Rebecca has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this. Your marriage wasn't the coincidence you believe it to be. Explain. Your wife was Eleanor Miller's goddaughter. Did you never wonder why a woman of Eleanor's background took such interest in a young woman from Montana? Why she attended your wedding despite having no apparent connection to either of you? Eleanor was at our wedding, I don't remember. Third row left side, silver hair, blue dress. She kept her distance, observed rather than participated. Standard tradecraft for maintaining operational security while confirming mission progress. What mission? Your entire relationship with Rebecca was engineered, Lieutenant, a long-term operation designed by your father and Eleanor to ensure your eventual involvement in this exact scenario. That's absurd. Rebecca and I met at a veterans support group. Complete chance. Nothing in our world happens by chance, Caleb. Your father identified you as his eventual successor decades ago, but he needed to ensure your loyalty, your commitment to continuing his mission after he was gone. Rebecca was selected, positioned, and instructed to form a relationship with you. The perfect handler, loving, supportive, completely above suspicion. You're lying. Rebecca loved me. We had a life together. I'm sure she did love you. The best operations incorporate genuine emotion, makes the performance more convincing. But your meeting was orchestrated, your relationship monitored and guided by William and Eleanor throughout. For what possible purpose? Insurance. Your father knew he was dying years before the heart attack that supposedly took him by surprise. He needed someone to continue his work, someone with the right skills and mindset, but also the personal motivation to see the mission through. Nothing motivates like love and loss, Lieutenant. My father wouldn't use his own son that way, wouldn't manipulate my life, my marriage. Your father was a patriot above all else, Caleb. He sacrificed everything for what he believed was the greater good, including normal ethical constraints, even family relationships. Why do you think he purchased this land after retirement? Positioned you in Special Forces operations that would develop precisely the skills you have needed today. Arranged your meeting with a woman who would bind you emotionally to his mission. Rebecca died of cancer. That wasn't part of any operation. No, her illness was tragically real, but even that served William's purpose. Grief sharpened your focus, isolated you from distractions, made you receptive to the breadcrumbs he left for you to follow. The perfect psychological preparation for the role he intended you to play. You expect me to believe my entire adult life has been some elaborate intelligence operation designed by my own father. Not your entire life, just the parts that matter for this mission. The parts that shaped you into the man who would find this facility, secure these files, and capture Redwood after 5 decades of evasion. You've performed exactly as William programmed you to, the dutiful son completing his father's unfinished business. Prove it. Prove any of this is true. Check the file you took from the facility, Section 3 Operational Assets. You'll find Rebecca listed there, codename Compass, handler for asset inheritor. That's you, Lieutenant. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't. But it won't change the reality of what your father did. He sacrificed your chance at an authentic life for what he considered the greater good. Classic William Morgan. Ruthless efficiency in service to an absolute moral framework. The helicopter sound approaches, not the extraction team's aircraft, but something different. Smaller, faster, with the distinctive engine signature of military rather than civilian equipment. The Watchmen network bringing its resources to bear, deploying assets to secure both Redwood and the surviving documentation. We'll continue this discussion later. Will we? Once your father's network takes custody, I doubt we'll have the opportunity for further conversation. They've waited 50 years to interrogate Redwood. I don't expect they'll waste time with pleasantries. If what you're saying about Rebecca is true, why tell me now? What do you gain? Perhaps I respect you enough to offer the truth before I disappear into whatever black site awaits me. Perhaps I want you to understand that your father wasn't the hero you believe him to be. Or perhaps I'm simply creating psychological disruption at a tactically advantageous moment. My father dedicated his life to identifying Soviet assets within our government, to protecting this country from enemies who had infiltrated its most sensitive institutions. Whatever methods he employed, his mission was necessary. His mission was an obsession, Caleb, a personal vendetta disguised as patriotic duty. Did you never wonder why he hunted Redwood with such single-minded determination? Why he continued long after the Cold War ended? Long after any rational assessment would conclude the mission no longer served its original purpose? Enlighten me. Moscow, 1968. Your father's first overseas posting as a military attaché. He met a woman there, Yelena Petrova, a translator assigned to the American delegation. Brilliant, beautiful, apparently sympathetic to Western ideals. They began a relationship despite explicit regulations prohibiting such contact. My father would never compromise operational security for a relationship. We all have vulnerabilities, Lieutenant. Williams was Yelena. For 6 months, they maintained their secret affair with your father, revealing increasingly sensitive information. Nothing explicitly classified, but the thousand small details that collectively create an intelligence mosaic. Standard honey trap operation executed perfectly by one of Moscow's most effective officers. You're saying my father was compromised? Thoroughly, until a routine counterintelligence sweep identified the relationship. William was immediately recalled to Washington, subjected to intensive debriefing, nearly court-martialed for his indiscretion. His career should have ended there, the classic fate of an officer caught in a honey trap. But it didn't. No, because William made a proposal to his debriefers. He would dedicate himself to hunting down Soviet penetration agents within the American system. His motivation wasn't patriotism, Caleb. It was revenge, pure and simple. The woman he loved had betrayed him, used him, manipulated his emotions for operational advantage. He never forgave that humiliation. And Yelena was me, or rather my controller. I was her operation, her protege, trained in her methods. When William began hunting Soviet assets, I became his white whale, the one target that represented everything he had lost, everything that had been taken from him by Moscow Center. My father became America's most effective counterintelligence officer because of a personal vendetta. The most powerful motivations are always personal, Lieutenant. Ideology fades, patriotism wavers, but humiliation and betrayal, those fuel a lifetime of dedication. Your father channeled his personal pain into professional excellence. His methods were unorthodox but undeniably effective, including manipulating his own son's life, arranging my marriage. The ultimate compartmentalization, separating his role as father from his identity as intelligence operative. In William's mind, these weren't contradictory actions but complementary ones. By guiding you toward Rebecca, he was both protecting his son and advancing his mission. That's not protection, that's exploitation. From your perspective, perhaps. From his, it was pragmatic necessity. The mission required continuity beyond his lifetime. You were the logical successor, but needed proper preparation and motivation. Rebecca provided both. The approaching helicopter is now clearly audible, its distinctive sound indicating a military Black Hawk rather than civilian equipment. The Watchmen network deploying serious assets for this extraction, appropriate given the significance of capturing Redwood after decades of evasion. Landing zone approximately 200 meters east based on terrain assessment. Your father's network maintains impressive resources for a private operation. They're not private, semi-official, retired intelligence professionals with continuing connections throughout the legitimate agencies, operating in the shadows but with tacit approval from certain oversight elements. The permanent government. Career professionals who outlast administrations, maintain institutional memory, pursue long-term objectives regardless of political shifts. Your father understood their value and apparently earned their loyalty. William had that effect. His absolute conviction created its own gravity, drawing others into orbit around his mission. The Watchman began as his personal network, but evolved into something more institutional over time. The satellite phone activates again, receiving rather than transmitting. Extraction team on final approach. Prepare for immediate evacuation. Authentication code required upon visual contact. Sierra Echo Victor Echo November. I need to check something. Caleb removes the file taken from the facility, the documentation on Redwood that represents 5 decades of his father's counterintelligence work. But instead of examining that section, he turns to the operational assets category, finding the page Victor referenced. There it is, exactly as described. Rebecca Morgan, née Chambers. Codename Compass. Primary handler for asset Inheritor. Operational parameters, long-term relationship management. Psychological preparation, information filtering. Mission status completed successfully, despite premature termination due to medical factors. It's true, all of it. I'm sorry, Caleb, truly. Despite our adversarial positions, I take no pleasure in destroying your memories of Rebecca. But you deserve to know the truth before your father's network continues manipulating you into fulfilling his mission. Why would my father's network continue his obsession with you? The Cold War is over. The Soviet Union collapsed 30 years ago. What possible threat do you represent now? Not me specifically. What I represent, the evolution of those old networks into new forms with new purposes. The tradecraft didn't disappear when the Berlin Wall fell, Lieutenant. It adapted, found new masters, new objectives. Some former Soviet assets now serve Russian interests. Others work for transnational organizations, criminal enterprises, corporate entities. The game continues, just with different players and stakes. And my father's network has been tracking these evolutions with remarkable effectiveness. The documentation you just destroyed contained the most comprehensive mapping of these transformed networks ever compiled. Decades of connections, financial trails, operational patterns. A counterintelligence masterpiece that threatened numerous powerful interests across traditional geopolitical boundaries. Which is why Blackwood's employers wanted it destroyed. Precisely. The modern intelligence landscape isn't divided along neat Cold War lines, Caleb. It's a complex ecosystem of competing and sometimes cooperating interests. Government agencies, private contractors, corporate entities, criminal organizations. Blackwood serves clients from multiple categories, all united by their desire to keep certain historical connections buried. And you, who do you serve now, Victor? My primary loyalty has always been to survival. 5 decades as a deep cover operative teaches one to prioritize pragmatism over ideology. The Russia I occasionally assist bears little resemblance to the Soviet Union I once served. My services are valuable to various parties precisely because I maintain independence from any single master. A mercenary, an independent contractor with specialized expertise, like most professionals in our field these days. The Blackhawk's landing lights become visible through the trees, powerful beams sweeping the terrain as the pilot identifies suitable landing zones in the difficult terrain. Professional, methodical military precision applied to a clandestine operation. They're coming for you, Redwood. 5 decades of hunting finally complete. Perhaps, though the mission parameters may have changed considerably since William's day. The Watchman may find my knowledge of active networks more valuable than any satisfaction derived from punishing historical transgressions. That will be their decision, not mine. Will it you or William Morgan's son, his chosen successor, the inheritor of his mission? If you recommend operational utilization rather than punitive processing, the network would likely follow your guidance. Why would I do that? You've spent your life betraying everything I've sworn to protect. Because pragmatism serves national security better than vengeance, Lieutenant. My knowledge of active Russian intelligence operations could neutralize dozens of current threats. My understanding of how Soviet networks evolved into modern configurations could help dismantle systems that continue operating 3 decades after the Cold War supposedly ended. So I just forget that you've been a traitor for 50 years, ignore what you did to my father, to this country. I suggest you balance historical accounting against current utility. William never could. His personal vendetta always outweighed strategic advantage in his calculations. That's why he never captured me, despite numerous opportunities. He didn't want Redwood neutralized. He needed the hunt to continue, needed an enemy to justify his mission. You're lying again. Check the file, Lieutenant. Section 4 Operational Encounters. Moscow 1973, Berlin 1977, Vienna 1982, Istanbul 1988. 4 confirmed instances where William positively identified me, had tactical advantage, and failed to execute capture. Because without Redwood, without his white whale, William Morgan was just another retired officer with paranoid tendencies and fading relevance. The Black Hawk is on final approach now, hovering briefly as the pilot conducts last-minute terrain assessment before committing to landing. The downwash creates a localized dust storm, the rotor noise drowning out normal conversation as the aircraft settles into position approximately 100 meters from their location. You have a choice now, Caleb. Complete your father's mission exactly as he designed it. Deliver me to the watchmen. Let them extract whatever information they can through whatever means they deem necessary, close the Redwood file after 50 years, or adapt the mission to current reality. Recognize that my knowledge has strategic value that transcends historical grievances. There's a third option. I tell them everything. It's about my father's obsession, about Rebecca, about the manipulation that's defined my entire adult life. I give them Redwood, but break the cycle of deception that's controlled me since before I knew it existed. Bold. William wouldn't approve. I'm not my father. The Blackhawk's side door slides open, revealing a tactical team in unmarked dark uniforms. Professional operators deploying with practiced efficiency to secure the landing zone and approach the extraction point. No insignia, no identifying markers, but their equipment and movement patterns suggest former special operations personnel now operating under different authority. Lieutenant Morgan, authentication Sierra Echo, Victor Echo. November. Authentication confirmed. Package secured +1 high-value detainee. Redwood. Affirmative. The team leader's expression changes. Professional detachment briefly giving way to something approaching awe. 50 years. The old man never gave up. The old man, Colonel Morgan. He built this network from scratch, maintained it through 7 administrations, kept the mission alive when everyone else declared victory and stood down. Most of us never believed we'd actually capture Redwood, thought it was just the white whale that kept the operation funded and active. My father created the Watchmen specifically to hunt Redwood. Initially, the mission parameters evolved over time, tracking Soviet networks as they transformed after the collapse, mapping new connections, identifying emerging threats. But Redwood remained the primary target throughout, the one that got away. And now that you have him, full protocol extraction, secure facility, comprehensive debriefing, threat assessment based on current intelligence landscape. The old man left very specific instructions for this scenario. When updated annually until his death, the last protocol revision was dated 3 weeks before his heart attack. He knew we'd get Redwood eventually, even if he didn't live to see it. Did my father's protocols mention me? Extensively. You were designated as inheritor from childhood. The contingency plan if the colonel couldn't complete the mission himself. Everything was designed to ensure you'd be in position to finish what he started if necessary. Including my marriage. The team leader's hesitation is momentary but noticeable. I'm not cleared to discuss operational details of that nature, Lieutenant. But you know about Rebecca, about Compass. All Watchmen personnel above certain clearance levels are familiar with the Compass operation. It was considered the Colonel's most successful long-term asset development program. Asset development. That's what my marriage was called. Lieutenant, we should complete the extraction. This location remains compromised, and Blackwood's remaining personnel may regroup once they assess the facility destruction. I want to see the complete file on Compass. All of it, operational directives, mission parameters, communication logs, everything my father documented about how he engineered my relationship with Rebecca. That documentation is compartmentalized, Lieutenant. Access is restricted to specific personnel with direct operational need to know. I had direct operational involvement. I was married to her for 8 years. I watched her die of cancer. I think that qualifies as need to know. The team leader signals to one of his operators, who approaches with a secure tablet. After authentication protocols and biometric confirmation, he accesses a classified database and retrieves the requested file. Compass Operational Documentation Complete Archive. The Colonel anticipated you might request this information if certain contingencies activated. He left specific instructions allowing full disclosure upon mission completion. Caleb accepts the tablet, scrolling through the comprehensive documentation of his father's most personal betrayal. Photographs of Rebecca before they met, receiving operational briefings, training in basic tradecraft, being prepared for her role as handler to William Morgan's son. Meeting reports documenting their chance encounter at the Veterans Support Group, her assessment of his psychological state, recommendations for optimizing their developing relationship. Their entire history together documented as an intelligence operation. 8 years of what he believed was authentic love and connection, revealed as a carefully orchestrated manipulation designed by his own father. He monitored everything, our conversations, our decisions, our most intimate moments. The Colonel was thorough in all operational matters, Lieutenant. Compass provided weekly updates throughout the relationship development phase, transitioning to monthly reporting once the attachment was confirmed stable. Until she died. Yes, her illness was unexpected and unrelated to the operation. Terminal cancer at 34, statistically improbable, tragically real. The Colonel considered terminating the operation when the diagnosis was confirmed, but Compass insisted on maintaining her cover and operational responsibilities until physically unable to continue. She knew she was dying, but continued reporting on me to my father. Her final report was dictated from hospice care 3 days before her death. She expressed concern that premature termination of the operation might compromise your eventual integration into the Inheritor role. The Colonel noted her exceptional dedication to mission parameters despite extreme physical distress. What was the mission? What was so important that it justified this level of manipulation, this complete violation of basic human decency? The preservation of critical counterintelligence capabilities outside official channels. Lieutenant. By the late 1990s, the Colonel recognized that traditional intelligence agencies were shifting resources away from counterintelligence against Russian operations, declaring victory in the Cold War, while former Soviet networks were actually adapting and evolving into new forms. He needed to ensure continuity of his mission beyond both his official career and his natural lifespan. And I was the solution, his son groomed from childhood to continue his obsession. The Colonel preferred the term calling to obsession, Lieutenant. He saw the hunting of Redwood and the mapping of evolved Soviet networks as a multi-generational responsibility, one that required dedicated personnel operating without the constraints of changing political priorities or bureaucratic limitations. Did Rebecca ever actually love me? Or was everything, every moment, every word, every touch, just operational performance? The team leader hesitates, professional detachment briefly giving way to human discomfort with the deeply personal nature of the question. The Colonel's documentation notes that Compass reported emotional compromise approximately 6 months into the operation. She requested reassignment due to developing authentic attachment that might impair operational objectivity. And the request was denied. The Colonel determined that authentic emotional involvement would enhance operational effectiveness rather than compromise it. Compass was instructed to incorporate genuine feelings into her asset management approach while maintaining reporting protocols and mission focus. So she did love me, but continued manipulating me anyway. And the final operational assessment indicates Compass experienced significant psychological distress regarding the deceptive aspects of her mission, particularly in the late stages of her illness. Her terminal status report includes an explicit statement of genuine emotional attachment and regret regarding operational parameters. She wanted to tell me the truth before she died. Yes, the colonel denied her request for operational disclosure. Compass complied with this directive, despite documented disagreement with the decision. Victor observes this exchange with professional interest. The veteran intelligence officer analyzing the complex psychological and operational dynamics revealed in this deeply personal debrief. Your father was consistent, at least. Mission parameters always outweighed personal considerations, even when the personal costs fell on those closest to him. We need to complete the extraction, Lieutenant. This position remains tactically vulnerable, and Blackwood's remaining assets may regroup once they've assessed the facility destruction. What happens to Victor now? Redwood will be transported to a secure facility for comprehensive debriefing. The colonel's protocols specify detailed interrogation regarding current Russian intelligence operations, evolved Soviet networks, and historical penetration activities dating back to the 1960s. Interrogation methods. Enhanced debriefing protocols authorized under special executive findings that govern the Watchmen network's operational parameters. The colonel was explicit regarding acceptable measures given Redwood's significance. My father authorized torture. The colonel authorized whatever means necessary to extract actionable intelligence from the highest priority Soviet asset ever identified within American intelligence circles. Redwood's knowledge represents 5 decades of penetration operations against critical national security infrastructure. And if I disagree with those protocols, if I believe Redwood's intelligence value would be better served through cooperative debriefing rather than coercive methods. The colonel's protocols designate you as Inheritor, his operational successor with full authority to modify mission parameters based on evolving circumstances. If you choose to countermand specific debriefing protocols, the Watchmen network would comply with your directives. The choice is yours, Lieutenant, Victor interjects. Complete your father's mission exactly as he designed it or adapt it to current reality. William Morgan created the ultimate contingency, a son prepared to continue his work, but empowered to make independent decisions when circumstances required. A final test to see if I'd follow his path blindly or forge my own. Exactly as a father should do, Victor observes. Guide his son toward maturity, then allow him the freedom to make his own choices, even if those choices diverge from the father's preferences. Perhaps William was a better father than you're currently prepared to acknowledge. The Blackhawk's engines maintain operational readiness rotors turning at reduced power while the extraction team secures the site and prepares for departure. Professional operators moving with practiced efficiency, respecting the personal drama unfolding within their mission parameters, but maintaining focus on security and operational completion. I'll want complete access to my father's files. All of them, operational directives, asset reports, mission assessments, everything he documented about Redwood, about Compass, about me. Granted, Lieutenant, the colonel's protocols explicitly authorize full disclosure to Inheritor upon successful completion of primary mission objectives. And Victor comes with us, secure but not subjected to enhanced interrogation. His intelligence value is too significant to risk compromising through coercive methods that might produce unreliable information. Acknowledged, modified debriefing protocols will be implemented upon arrival at the secure facility. I want to meet them, the Watchmen leadership, the people who worked with my father, who knew about Rebecca, who participated in manipulating my life to serve their mission. That can be arranged, Lieutenant. The steering committee convenes monthly at a secure location. They've maintained operational continuity since the colonel's death following his established protocols while adapting to evolving threats. Good, because I have questions that only they can answer. About the ethical boundaries my father crossed, about the manipulation of his own son, about the exploitation of a dying woman's genuine emotions to serve an intelligence operation. The colonel anticipated your reaction, Lieutenant. His final protocol update includes a personal message to be delivered upon your full integration into the Inheritor role, which is, Forgive me, son. The mission demanded sacrifice from all of us, including me, including you, including Rebecca. I chose to sacrifice your innocence rather than leave you vulnerable in a world where the threats never truly disappeared, just evolved into new forms. The burden I've placed on you is unfair, unforgivable by normal standards. But these are not normal times, and we are not normal men. We are watchmen standing guard against enemies others choose not to see. I'm sorry for the pain my choices caused, but I would make the same decisions again to ensure you had the skills, the knowledge, and the motivation to continue what I began. Some fires must never be allowed to die out no matter the cost of keeping them burning. My father's last words to me, a justification for destroying any chance I had at an authentic life. The colonel viewed it differently, Lieutenant. He believed he was preparing you for a meaningful life, one defined by purpose and service rather than comfortable illusion, the same standards he applied to himself throughout his career. The difference being that he chose his path. I never got that choice. Yet you have one now, to accept the role he prepared you for, to reject it entirely, or to reshape it according to your own values and understanding. That's the true inheritance he left you. Not just a mission, but the capacity to decide what that mission means and how it should be executed. Let's go. I have questions that need answering and people waiting to be held accountable for the choices they made. The extraction team moves with renewed purpose, securing Blackwood for transport, establishing a defensive perimeter as they prepare to board the Blackhawk. Victor remains under guard, but is treated with professional courtesy rather than punitive restraint. His status shifted from enemy asset to intelligence resource by Caleb's intervention. Your father would be proud, Lieutenant, Victor observes quietly. Not because you're following his path exactly, but because you're making decisions based on strategic reality rather than emotional reaction. The mark of a true intelligence professional. I'm not doing this for him. No, you're doing it for the mission, as you understand it, not as he defined it. The student surpassing the teacher, the son becoming his own man, while honoring the father's legacy. William Morgan created the perfect successor, one who thinks for himself while maintaining focus on what truly matters. And what matters, Victor? In this world of shifting loyalties and evolved threats, what actually matters? The truth, Lieutenant. Not as ideology or absolute moral framework, but as functional reality that guides effective action. Your father sought truth through a lens distorted by personal vendetta. You have the opportunity to see more clearly, to distinguish between historical grievances and current necessities. Poetic for a man who spent 50 years lying for a living. The best liars understand the value of truth better than anyone, Caleb. We recognize its power precisely because we've learned to manipulate it so effectively. Your father understood this paradox. It's why he created such an elaborate deception to prepare you for a life dedicated to uncovering deception. The Blackhawk's engines increase power rotors building to lift capacity as the extraction team completes final preparations for departure. The mission nears completion. Redwood captured surviving documentation, secured William Morgan's half-century quest finally reaching its conclusion through the actions of the son he prepared for precisely this moment. As Caleb Morgan boards the helicopter, the silver pendant still hanging around his neck, he carries not just the physical legacy of his father's mission, but the weight of understanding its true nature. The deception, the manipulation, the ruthless subordination of personal ethics to operational necessity, all part of William Morgan's comprehensive approach to counterintelligence, applied even to his closest family relationships. The Shadow Watcher's duty continues transferred across generations, but transformed by the son's understanding of the father's flaws. The mission endures, monitoring threats that evolve rather than disappear, maintaining vigilance when others declare victory, and stand down protecting truths that powerful interests would prefer remain buried. But Caleb Morgan will execute that mission on his own terms, with eyes open to both its necessity and its costs. The perfect inheritor, shaped by his father's design yet capable of transcending it, continuing William Morgan's work while rejecting the moral compromises that defined it. The helicopter lifts off carrying its passengers toward a secure facility where decades of secrets await examination, where accountabilities will be assigned, where the next phase of a multi-generational mission will take shape under new leadership with new ethical parameters. The search for truth continues, though the methods have evolved. And Caleb Morgan, inheritor of his father's mission, but not his moral blindness, stands ready to carry that legacy forward. Adapted to a changing world and guided by a commitment to integrity his father never fully embraced. The Shadow Watcher's mission endures passed from father to son, a vigilance that transcends generations, while evolving to meet the demands of both effectiveness and ethical responsibility. William Morgan's greatest legacy, not the mission itself, but the son capable of reimagining it for a world the father never fully understood.